Hello, how are y'all
Hello.
doing?
Okay, how are you, Diana?
Good, good, good. I have a photo that I'm trying to send you guys because I noticed that I don't have the same file available. Hold on. And cancel. All right, so I need to send. Yeah, I have a file that wasn't the right one in the handouts. So for anyone who's not on VDI, I'm sending it. Okay. So, all right. So nice to see you all.
Good to see you.
Nice to see you, Diana.
And it's one more beautiful day in Santa Barbara. Let me let people in. Yeah, fortunately not our last day. We still have one more week, so that's cool. Let me see who's in here. Oh, hey, Claudia. She wants to stay hidden, but I'm not going to let her. She can stay hidden. She can stay hidden. So in case you all look down and about into our group, we have a new group member today, Claudia down there. And I'm saying down there because she's at the bottom of my list. Anyway, so Claudia, I think I'd been mentioning over this whole session that someday, somehow, I'm going to be evaluated in one of my many classes. And it's happening. Claudia is my peer, and she is here hanging out today as much as many of you have been in other classes that I hung out in this whole session. And she's doing an evaluation. So treat me awesomely well the way I will. Tell her how wonderful I am. No. You all know how wonderful I am. Anyway, so Claudia is an old friend on top of a peer and a colleague. So I look forward to having her say that she wants to join our classes one of these days.
I would love to, and I'm excited. I've heard tons about you. I've already read all the great comments, so I'm looking forward to enjoying the class in person.
Don't let them spoil you. All right. Okay, guys, so welcome. Just wanted to say hi again. Let's make sure everyone's in. Remember, as people are popping in, this is the time for you guys to be opening up your Photoshops and Bridge. And if you're on VDI, connecting to VDI and all of that. I have to say I had a lot of issues connecting to VDI today. I'm actually not sure one of the files that I want you guys to get. Oh, see, it says it's a large file. Anyway, I'm gonna see if everyone can open it, and if not, I will switch on the dime to a different file. Let me let more people in. All right, so here's the thing. I have quite a few announcements to make before we jump in, so please use your time, as I said, wisely, to get ready and have Bridge and have all the files ready to go for us to open up. And let me show you first the file that I want you guys to start looking for. And if you don't have it, while I make my announcements, I can send you the link to the file. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen for a second of my Bridge, and then I'll come back. But let me open this first. So here is what's happening to me is that a lot of the files today weren't actually seemingly uploading. You know how it always seems like they are not there, but sometimes they truly are not there. And I don't know if you can see, but I have a little wheel going. It's driving me crazy. But anyway, if you scroll down, I have two photos that I want us to be able to open today. One of them is one that you've all had there for a while. So you should all have this one, which is Reflection Sunset Arches. Okay, so go down to your R. So we're not going to open it yet, but just find and make sure you find it. And then the second one, and this is the one that's a little bit different, is this one that says Santi Headshot. You guys have a version where he's already been miraculously cured of his zits if you downloaded them at home. So I'm going to do a single click on the space bar to show you what I'm talking about. This one that I want you guys to open, he is still in full on zit mode, awesome teenager mode. And we want this version to be the one that we're going to work on. So if you're on VDI, this is the version you have, you're fine. But if you're at home and you downloaded the files early on, then here's a link. And let me see if you guys can get to it. So head over to your chat, you guys, and in the chat, I just put a link in there and tell me, for those of you who are at home, remember, I know you're all at home. I always say this. The ones of you who are using your own personal Photoshop. Yeah, there's a conversation we have here, Claudia. Everyone's at home, but at home means you're using your own Photoshop and Bridge. At school or on VDI means you're using the school's Photoshop and Bridge. Everyone who's on VDI has the files, you're fine. But it's those of you who are home. If you don't see this one that says Santi Headshot Original, go find it on this link, because this, what you might see is Santi Headshot Raw Healed or something like that, because that's the one that you had. And I noticed that I had already the healed one. Okay. So anyway.
Deanna, it says to get permission. It says you don't have permission, and I pressed request access and it says I'll get an email to tell me I can get access.
That's interesting, given that it's the same folder. Why would you, are you accessing it? Oh, you're accessing it. No, you should be on Pipeline. It's in the folder. Otherwise, just go to your folder, to your Pipeline handouts folder and download it from there. If you all know how to get this, I thought might be easier, but if it asks for you to, if it asks for a special link, then just go to your handouts folder as you normally do and find it. Because remember, the other one says Santi Headshot Raw or Healed, and it was him already healed. So we want the non-healed one, but we won't be using it till the second half of today. So I'm just giving you this heads up so that you can go grab it and download it. And in the background while I'm helping someone else, by the time we get to it, you should all have that file available, either through this link or just going through the handouts and finding this one, because now it's the only one available. All right. That said,
question here.
yes.
It says that it's a different color space. I'm trying to figure out where I am viewing it.
Just go with whatever color space it pops in. Just say, okay.
Oh, all right.
And we're not opening, I mean, we don't need it yet. As I said, it's just for people who when they go to their personal files and see that they have the other version, just you have, you know, an hour or even during break to open it up. Cool. So
what is the first photo you need?
the first one we're going to be is Reflection Sunset. It starts with R, so go down to the R's. Okay, so don't forget everyone to go into the chat and sign in and say your little hello, howdy doody. And next thing I want to do is show you guys some other awesome work, but our wonderful Bob, who keeps sending me great stuff that he's up to.
It's not doing well.
What's that? Someone said something, excuse me. No. All right. So I want to show you guys something else that Bob sent me today. Remember, I always ask you if anyone else has something you want to showcase, but here's Bob using his Photoshop skills. So I don't know if you see this guy. So here's, I am assuming your grandchild, I think you said, right, Bob?
Yes, my granddaughter.
Yeah, your granddaughter doing something horribly scary. I swear I just gulped. And then I remembered it's probably an LED bulb, but my mothering instincts just popped out.
Oh my God, scary.
Anyway, I'm sure. Anyway, so I have these, we have these lights on for a booth. My husband, I think you guys know, he does pottery, and so on his booth at night we put these lights. So I know they're not hot, but I swear it took me a second there, Bob.
They're not
Anyway,
hot, okay.
but this is the cool thing. Look at what he did with Photoshop.
Oh,
Cool.
Oh.
All right, so he went from this, right, with all the background and all the stuff going on, to that one. I thought that was really creative. I thought that was really creative.
Yeah, but I should have refined the edge a little better.
Yeah, I was gonna say, see here
Yeah.
how the hair looks like it's been cut out with a pair of scissors, right?
Well, you know, it was a few years ago.
Yeah, so that's why you're in class. You're in class to kind of
Exactly.
figure out how to do things like refining the edges of your masking and stuff like that. But I just like your creativity. By the way, the mask is great everywhere, just in the hair, but that's always where it's hardest, right? So this is the kind of photo that maybe if you actually are open to it and want to share with me, maybe we can actually work on it next week or something. I don't know. I'll talk to you on a personal level if you're okay with that, because I, as you know, love showing real photos that you guys are working on. So this might be an example of something that we could work on. But anyway, I'm going to stop that share. Yeah, Leland, you raised your hand.
I had a question about how many more classes we have this quarter. Is next week?
Yes, one more. One tiny little more class. I know, time flies when you're having a good time. Okay, someone in there, someone has to find their extra sound and turn it off. And if I keep hearing it, otherwise I'll mute everyone. All right. Yeah, next week is our last one. So we're gonna, do a great job today to do as much as you can. And I wanted to tell you, thank you for asking that question, Leland, because I have a series of announcements. Summer 1 and 2 registration is already open. So I'm going to put some stuff here in the chat. I'm going to send you an email with all of this, but I'm going to put here in the chat some information. Check your chat. Summer 1, May 17th is when it starts, which is nothing. It just, 3 weeks or 2 weeks. 2, 3, 2. My goodness, May 17th, 2 weeks from now. So if you want to know, which I'm sure you always want to know, I am teaching a Photoshop. There's the info for that. I'll just give you all this little info in here. I'm teaching a bunch of other classes. I'll post them all together, but mainly I just wanted to point you to the Photoshop one. It's going to be Fridays 9 to 12:45 in summer 1. Okay, that one's summer 1. And let me put in this Photoshop summer 2. Summer 2, there's that schedule for Photoshop. Okay, so those are my 2 Photoshop classes. The first one was summer 1, the second one summer 2. Beyond that, I've got a host of other classes I'm teaching that I'm going to just throw in there in case some of you guys save your chats, but I will email you all this information. Okay, so you don't need to worry, but yes, I'm teaching all the math classes again. Okay, so that should be fun. And then that's summer 2. So anyway, I put a whole bunch of stuff in there. The only one that I want you guys to focus on right now is the first Photoshop one, summer 1, starting in 2 weeks, Friday 9 to 12:45 p.m. So if that's something you're interested, please go ahead and register. If you need help to register, that's the email you need to send it to. And the last link I want to send, again, I have this prepared as an email to send you guys as soon as class is over, but some of you guys register during class. I know that, during break. So the last link I just sent you there is a link that sends you to a spreadsheet with all of the updated classes. When you go and when you sign in, when you guys receive this catalog, remember, it's a great idea of what we're going to offer, but it's never completely accurate. Remember, I always tell you guys, they made it like 6 months ahead of time. We have so many changes. There's, for example, my second Photoshop and even my first one, I think, is not in here. And I don't know why my Illustrator class isn't showing up. I'm going to be teaching Illustrator and it's not showing up in there nor any other place. So click on this link and it will always be updated. So as they make changes, this last link will show you what the actual teachers and the actual classes are. All right. That's it for now. I don't want to spend too much more time with registration. I just wanted you guys to know all that basic information. And hopefully you'll I'll see you guys in a few weeks again. And remember, one last thing about that is that, I'm closing Bob's photos here, heading over to my thing again. Remember that we have, some of you guys have been with me on and off for many different classes, and some of you guys it's the first time. So you might wonder, why take the class again? And as many of you can attest, it's because I constantly will be teaching you different things. And every time with new images, I'll be showing you different ways to do the same thing because, you know, in Photoshop, there's 5 ways to do everything, right? So as you keep taking these classes, you become the expert. Other people are the newbies. And then you build upon what I'm teaching everyone, because everyone who's here is going to learn at their level. Okay, depending on how I say things, you're all going to be able to keep learning. So I don't know, Bob, how many years have you been taking?
Well, it's kind of embarrassing. You
Yeah,
know,
it's just funny because I met Bob when we were still using personal emails to teach. So every now and then I get emails from teaching from Bob, and I always have to go, you know, you guys, you have to use your pipeline right now when it's about class. Because
sorry.
for years, oh my God, we were using our personal emails, and that's how far along. And I don't know how long that was, maybe 7 years ago or something like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, guys, let's start with Photoshop. By now, everyone should have all the files open. Photoshop ready to go. Files that I told you at the beginning queued in. Some of you guys got in here late, and I just wanted to share my screen now, and we're going to point to the files we're going to use. Yes.
The first are the reflections is
Mhm.
not I cannot get it. I got Santis, the
headshot, but not
the
the
headshot,
R.
yeah, but not the other one. It doesn't. I don't have permission. It says. But
You know what? It's a raw file, and I was wondering if
Yeah.
it's not. I mean, you're getting it from the school, from the same
Yeah.
class folder. So
Yeah,
when you're
from the
say
same-
right
from the
click
same.
and download, it doesn't. Do you want to share your screen and show me what's happening? Guys, the file that, for those of you who arrived a bit later, I asked everyone to open up, and I'm going to put the name of the file in there. Reflection dash sunset dash arches dash Santi dash CR2. So I just put in the name of the file that you guys, it says sunset, not Sunsur, but anyway. And that's the file that you guys need to open. But I was having trouble. So I see your CR2. You are in the folder, you're in Bridge, and it says no. Oh, look at all the lines you have there. Did you re-sign into your Google Drive file stream today, this morning?
Yes, but I was able to get Santis.
Yeah,
the-
but see right above that, if you scroll down a little bit, see all those lines that you have showing up and all those that are called pixels. That's telling me that your Google Drive isn't didn't come in like this morning. So you signed into your Google Drive this morning?
Yes.
But like on the far bottom right little triangle where you need to sign out and sign in. Wow. That's a problem because I want everyone to use that file.
Am I the only one who's getting this problem?
I don't know. Let's find out. Is anyone else going? Can you go back to the drive and let's see. Let's go back to the shared drive. Yeah, go in there and Photoshop shared drive. And then Photoshop class files. Sometimes it just needs to be kind of kick-started. Scroll down to the R. See all those lines? That's what's telling me that you might still need to re-sign into your Google Drive.
Look at that's what I
yeah, okay, so say okay to that. Okay, and let's give this a try to re-sign into your Google Drive file stream. Go to the bottom right of your screen, click on that, go into that little Google Drive icon, the little colorful triangle to the right, yep, that one. And remember, go up to the gears.
Yes.
And everyone who hasn't done this morning, remember, that's the time that we start at the beginning, that you need to do this every morning. Well, every time before we connect. Okay, go to disconnect account. You need to refresh your Google Drive, disconnect account, say okay.
Okay.
Okay. And now go back to the same little triangle. And now click on it. It's not colorful this time because you're signed out. Oh, it didn't sign you out. It didn't sign you out. Go back to your Bridge and close your Bridge. No, Bridge on the desktop, like right under
right
you.
here. Okay.
Yeah. Close that out for a second. Not the Photoshop. No, that's Photoshop. That's Photoshop. Don't close that one. Bridge again. Go to where it says Bridge desktop on the left. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, close that one out and then go and do the Google thing again. There it is,
Okay.
sign in with browser. Okay, so don't do
Okay.
that. No, don't sign in with browser. It doesn't,
I ready.
that's fine. It's okay. Go ahead and do pipeline. So everyone who hasn't signed in this morning to the Google Drive, I've found that I've had to do it, the last week and a half, 2 weeks and a half. Google Drive is kicking us out. You need to re-sign in. You should, but we've been doing this from the beginning, but in case you haven't, all right, so go ahead and say enter. You need to scroll down a bit more. Yep, next. Oops. All right, guys, while Patricia is doing this, I want to make sure that everyone's going into their shares and to their bridge and seeing if they can see that file. All right. Looks like your password still isn't in.
No, let me do it. I can do it from here now. Oh, let me see.
Okay.
I want to log out everything.
All right, so I'm gonna stop your sharing
Thank
for
you.
a sec,
Mhm.
and then I know what you're going through. I just want to share this again to make sure that everyone sees what's happening, because some people showed in a little bit later and they might not know what's going on. This is the file that I want you guys to open and bridge. And notice that it's a CR2. Okay, so everything else we have next to it is a JPEG or I have PSDs like this one here, and those are all Photoshop files, which if you double click will open in Photoshop. But remember that when you open a raw file, raw files open up in between a process. So between Photoshop and Bridge, there's this raw filter, the raw engine that's going to open up. And so you need to be on a raw file for that to open, for that to work. Let me get the little spotlight to show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so here's my little spotlight button. So see, this is a CR2 down there. That means it's a raw file shot by a Canon camera. If I click on it and look over here at all the different metadata that we've been talking about, you can see all the information. It tells you it's a camera raw image. It tells you everything about how it was shot, the lenses, the speed, the file, you know, all the stuff we've been using, all the metadata. When you click on an NEF, that's also a raw, but this time it says just camera raw image. This is a Nikon. So remember, this is the only set of extensions that are based on the brand of the equipment that shot the photograph. All right. So you're not going to see the word raw at the end, but when you see these extensions, that is a raw file. Remember, it's a file that your camera caught without doing all the compression and post-processing that a JPEG will have. So like if you open up a JPEG, boom, it opens up into Photoshop. But when you have a raw file, okay, so now let's head over to this one for those of you who have it, and let's make sure this isn't just everyone's problem and not Patricia's problem. When you have a CR2, if you open it, normally it should open directly into RAW. But in case you're not sure, you can right click and say open in camera raw. But since it is already a raw file, it should, just by doing a single double click, and we're going to do that right now, I'm double clicking, it pulls up Photoshop, as you can see, but then the gears keep on working and boom, raw engine opens up. So I'm going to close that again. I'm going to cancel that out so I can show you again what I did. So those of you who got there, you're fine. And now I'm going to deal with those of you who didn't get there and see from whom it did not work. Okay, so back in Bridge, remember, if it's already a raw file, a double click is all we need to do. If we wanted to open a JPEG in RAW, we would have to right click and say open in camera raw. But since it's already a raw file, the extension CR2 gives it away. All you need to do is double click. All right, so now feedback. For whom did it not open? Who is having the issue of the file saying that you don't have permission?
I find the file.
Ellen, I think you're still working off of the fall photos in your computer. If so, go up to the, go to the handouts to find the file.
I thought I got you. I don't see it there.
This one's been here from the beginning. Yeah, this one's been here from the beginning of this class, but it wasn't there in the fall or even in the spring 1 section, because I've had the Photoshop spring 1 and spring 2. This is the spring 2. And this is new, remember, to spring too, because of the new files that I bring in. You guys have never seen this photo.
Okay.
Even those of you like Alan who's been taking this class for a bit.
But
All
now
right.
I can't log in again to the SBCC. It doesn't seem to accept. It doesn't. I get.
You know, they were having issues with pipeline over the weekend. I hope
Yeah,
they still don't
it's a
have issues
problem.
today. Well, do you have any other raw file that you can open right now while you go and find it? Because there's a
Oh,
couple of other raw ones here
Oh,
where you
probably.
can apply. Since I know you've done the raw class a few times, you can open up maybe this one here is raw, or this one in here. Let's just see if you
Okay.
have another one. These are actually named raw at the beginning. So maybe try
Oh.
with that one.
Okay.
And then just kind of, or here, this one, the sample raw image, those are all raw files. For those of you who work ahead or who work in between classes, I always put quite a few different raw files, and then I choose one to work in a group, and the rest are there for you to, you know, play around and learn on your own. Okay, so it seems like everyone else, okay, give me a resounding no, either with click on your feedback emoticons and tell me no, or say no, or write no in the chat if you do not have the file. I need to make sure everyone other than Alan right now has the file. Is that so? Am I clear to go? Yeah, okay. Going one, going twice. All right, okay, so I'm gonna open mine now. So here we go. Double click on it and it opens up in RAW because it is already a RAW file. So today we're gonna explore two types of files in RAW. This one, which is a RAW file, and then the headshot. I know that sweet little pimply guy is my eldest son. You mainly have seen photos of him as a baby, but he is, oh my God, 18 right now. I'm always scared about saying that number. He's an adult. And we're going to clear out his pimples and we're going to heal him with RAW, but it's not a RAW file. And we're going to do that inside of Photoshop versus this one that is inside of Camera Raw. So we're going to use Camera Raw in two different ways today. All right. Cool. So here we go. This is, if you see this photograph appearing in your camera, in the back of your camera, you look at it, or if you see it in your computer, you probably say, what do you say about it? It's a, you know, let's toss this one, or, oh, you underexposed. I mean, I don't know. What would you say? Remember, we first need to figure out what would you guys think about a photo like this?
It's a little dark.
It's dark. Would you think it's fixable? Because it's really dark. It's beyond underexposed.
It's fixable. It's great. I like it actually a lot.
You know what? It's hard to tell what it is because it's kind of like an abstract. So just so you guys know, and it's hard to tell until we fix it a little bit, even what it is, but it's actually in Arches National Park. There's a little tiny bit of a puddle of water in between some cracks, and there's snow around it. And that puddle of water is reflecting a brightly lit arch in the sunset sun. And so which is up above, right? So, but right now you can't see that because it's so underexposed. And if this were not a RAW file, it pretty much would be a photograph that you'd have to toss. Okay, it's one of those where, how much time do I spend on this thing? Well, 3 hours now. Let's get rid of it, because you could if you're a really good retoucher. But because it was shot in Photoshop, in Camera Raw, this image, if you inspect it, the first thing you need to do, guys, head down to the very, very bottom left and click on the 100%. The most important thing always is to see if it's worth spending your time on is remember to see if it's what? Why do I see it at 100%? What's that golden number, you guys?
The normal size.
Yeah, so at 100% is where we check. It's the normal size. It's not reduced. It's the zoom at 100%. Allows us to check for the quality of the image with respect to, not with color, but respect to what? I'm just kind of leading you in. What are we checking right now? What am I zooming around? Say that again.
To focus.
Yes, so we check for focus at 100% all the time. Okay, so especially if you're a veteran of Photoshop, it's like the golden number. If you do not say a photo is worthwhile using until you check for it at 100%, you see only a portion of the photo. But do I see focused? I can almost even click on the texture of that snow. Yes, it is definitely 100%. It is definitely in focus. Remember, put down your space bar, hold down your space bar, pick up your little hand and drag yourself around with a click and drag around the photo. And as we head to the back, we discover that the back is not in focus, which is perfectly fine. That's normal for a low light photo. We do not have photo, focus all the way through, but where it matters, and again, I'm holding down the space bar to bring up my hand and I click and drag, but where it matters, which is in this puddle, in the texture of the snow and in the stone, yeah, it's perfectly in focus. And you sigh, you give a huge sigh of relief and you go, all righty now, let's make this thing work. Because it's a raw file, we can do that. Head back to this thing that says fit and view, click on that, and it'll fit again the whole photo now that we checked our focus. And we know that we can work on it and it's worth spending our 2 minutes or our 3 hours, depending on how long you'll take. Don't ever work on a photo before first checking at 100%. All right. So before I head deep into fixing this, Patricia, where are you? What happened with your photo? Were you able to download it and open it? Patricia. You're speaking to me, but your sound is off.
Okay, I still welcome to camera run. I have the picture.
Okay, you got in the welcome to camera. Right?
Yes,
Just say,
yeah.
okay, perfect, you got it. All right, cool. So we're all there. Okay, so here we go. Now here on the right side, those of you who've used Camera Raw for years, for example, Bob, Alan, there's a bunch of you guys that I know have been using Camera Raw for years. Camera Raw changed dramatically. It completely shifted the workspace in the last 2 versions of Raw, or in the last version of Raw. So all of the tools that are here have, I mean, it's like it's a new program, which rarely happens. Most of the times changes are minor, but they made a huge change. So I know we've opened Raw once before here. I just want to make sure everyone's comfortable with what these little headlines and triangles, these little, I think they're called technically disclosure triangles or some phenomenally weird name like that by Photoshop. Basically the little arrow that twirls, okay? You click out one time and it points down. You see everything that the subject basic wants to show you. When you're done with basic, you twirl that up by clicking on that arrow and you move on to the next one and you click on curve, and here you have everything that curve has to show you, and you close it up. So don't leave them all open, right? So then we go to detail where we do sharpening and stuff like that, and you close it up, okay? So keep it as closed as you can in case you have some others that are open from other times that you opened them. So say you had 3 open. Next time you open Camera Raw, those 3 start open. Remember, all the settings stay the same. So let's close everything up and twirl open only basic, all right? And you can either click on that little twirl, or you can just click on the name basic. That's it. That's all it takes to open it, okay? And notice that right now, the very, very, very top is showing me a couple of magic buttons, which if it weren't because I wanted to teach you how to do Raw, I would first say every time that you're not in class, the first thing you should do is hit that little auto. Now we're going to hit it right now so that you can finally see the photo we're working on. But remember, this auto button here is dangerous. Sometimes it's fixed your photo, boom, and I'm going to click it right now. And whoa, that's a whole different photo, right? It's like, oh my God, that thing was hiding. That photo was hiding there. Yeah. Now, when you click on it again, all those changes disappear. So if you have no idea where to start, auto is a great place to start. And you go, hey, Photoshop, show me what you can do. Now you have no say in what Photoshop does. You have no say in whether you want it more or less red, more or less white, more or less whatever. This just does what it thinks it's got to do to balance the tones. That's all it does. So it doesn't know that this is snow. It doesn't know that this is a puddle or a reflection. It just looks at all the colors and gives it a balance. So sometimes it does a phenomenally good job, and other times it misses completely because it really doesn't know what's happening. So if you get lucky, it gives you something that's good enough for you to keep on working, right? And I think that this is one of those lucky times where it gave you something good enough. Now, when we first saw this, from where it was to this, it's like, oh my God, that's great. It's perfect. It's been fixed. But when we really start to focus on it, now that we've seen this for a while, you might notice that this doesn't look white. Pay attention. And I know that everyone's got a different screen monitor going on, but look at this thing and tell me what kind of, is this pure white?
Mm-mm.
No,
What
Blue.
color do you see here? It's
Blue.
blue.
yeah, it's kind of a middish, lightish blue, teal almost, isn't it going almost teal depending on your screen? Also, when you look at it for too long, your eyes do start to see white because you know it's snow and your brain's going to trick you, right? So look away, look at something else. Definitely don't look, you know, and in fact, look at something else that you know is white, not on your screen, but like in, I don't know, maybe you have a white piece of paper or something else, and then look at it again. And then it's like, oh my God, that is really blue, right? For those of you who have a hard time seeing little subtle bits of color, what you need to do is kind of just unaccustom your eyes. You know how when you walk in or out of a dark room into the sunlight, you're suddenly blinded for a little bit and then your eyes get accustomed and boom, we're off and running and we can see, right? Same thing when you walk into a dark room. So our eyes get accustomed really quickly. So whenever you're trying to figure out color, what you need to do is put your eyes on something else. Just suddenly look at your room, look at your next door neighbor. Well, that's when you're in a class. Here, we're just like, look around to other stuff and then snap back into that snow. That's probably when you'll really see how off color that snow is. Okay, so now that some people were like, oh, well, it still looks like snow to me. Now, hopefully it really, you do see some of that blue and green. I see some green in there too. That's why I'm saying it's kind of teal. All right, so what do we do? We have to start working with how to color correct this image. So I'm not going to make it, this is an image that the computer in Auto already made a lot of changes. See all these sliders that are, you know, squiggly and all over. Let's turn this off for a second and notice all of these sliders right in the middle. So that is the default settings. And in the default settings of this photo, you still have these sliders kind of scooched over. These did not go to the middle. See that? So once you click on Auto and all the sliders are all over the place, these are the ones that Photoshop has decided to shift. So let's turn them off again for a second, and all on and off, notice that temperature and tint have not shifted. So these are the sliders that the Auto moves. This one, on the other hand, white balance, is a completely separate issue. Let's click on Auto again. And let's talk about white balance. So white balance is temperature and tint over here. It's either very blue, very yellow, green, or red are the kind of colors we can be getting. And as shot means this is what the camera captured. The camera decided that this was the right white balance. If we click on this, we have whole bunches of other type of choices that are confusing because of the names. What it means is the light at the moment of shooting, was it daylight? Was it cloudy? Was it shady? Were you in tungsten light? Were you in fluorescent light? We're using a flash. So that's what these words mean. So the second one down is Auto, which is what does Photoshop think? Okay, let me let Lisa in. So what does Photoshop think? So now this is an Auto for all the other settings. This is the Auto for what does Photoshop think is the correct white balance. So let's check out and see what Photoshop thinks. Click on Auto. Oh, there's a little shift there, a pretty big shift, right? So we went from as shot, which the first time we saw it, we thought, woo, that looks like good snow. And now when we compare that to the white balance according to Photoshop, we go, oh, okay, that's better. Like we're always working on still what Photoshop thinks without our brain being part of it, just knowing where the buttons are. But we're getting closer. We're getting closer to something that looks like snow. In fact, this is pretty close. Let me show you. If you know that it's bright daylight and you click on bright daylight, then that's what your camera, that's what Photoshop does. It adds a whole bunch of blue. If you tell them it's cloudy, it corrects for that blue and it adds more red because cloudy days are very blue. Remember, we've talked before about how as the day goes along, the color of light changes. And so depending on what color of light, the corrections it'll be happening. Now, let me go back to fit in screen. There's also the possibility of, well, we tell it was a shady day. And so then it gets better. It means that it's taking even more blue out, putting more red, et cetera, et cetera. So each one of these white balances might work for you. Tungsten, which is a very orange light. If we say that this was tungsten, it's going to go bright, really blue. Oh, if you have these red and blue things coming in, do me a favor for now and up here, it might be that you already have them on or not, but I'm going to click on that little red thing and that one there. I'm going to actually option click. When you click on them, these guys, all that weird red stuff that we had before turns off and turns on. Okay, so I want you to have them off. Tungsten makes our thing go really blue, and then fluorescent. Okay, so all of these are different, possibly different colors of light that you have. Let's head back into as shot, which is whatever the camera decided to do, which we know now is more blue than automatic. I just want to show you something that there's still some corrections to do. So basically, if you want to go to one of these stops, that's helpful. But the reason I want to show you what to do without these is because when you have a raw file that came out of the camera, you have these options available. But the rest of the time that you use raw on a JPEG, this is the only thing that will change. When you're on a JPEG and you go here to as shot, you will not have any of these choices. Okay. Imagine that none of these presets are there and you're left with as shot and auto. That's all you will have available if this is not a native raw file from your camera. If this is a JPEG, you do not have these two. So I'm going to work on ignoring them as if all I had was this. And then you can add more blue or take away blue by adding yellow and add a ton of yellow. And then take away yellow by adding blue. So basically add blue takes away yellow, add yellow takes away blue. So as you move the slider along, you yourself can decide where you think that snow is at its most neutral. Okay, so that's one way to do this. And train your eyes to do this is probably the best way than having, you know, the computer tell you what it thinks is right. But anyway, if you're not sure where to land in all of this, then remember the easiest way is to head over, for example, to auto and then correct from there. So I'm going to do that. As shot is very blue, I'm going to head to auto. I like auto, but I think there's still room for improvement. So I'm going to see if I'm going to add a little bit more yellow to it. Now, when you do that, be aware of the time of day. Even the auto doesn't know what time of day it is. And I know because I was there, although this is a photo, again, for some reason, Santi is a big part of this class today. He took this photo last winter, I guess, the winter, well, not last winter, we were all stuck in, no, yeah, last winter. Last winter was before coronavirus. Yeah, last Christmas. I'm confused. We were still out and about in the Christmas of last year, right? And that's when he took this photograph. And this is sunset, okay? And this is orange sunset. So it would make sense that the light that's falling on the snow might be reflecting some of that orange dome. Or at the very least, it's not necessarily a bright day, it's sunset. And if the sun isn't falling on this area, then it's probably already getting dark, right? So consider that it's okay maybe to have a bit more yellow light if it's sunset than if it were midday. Anyway, so as you move this thing around and decide, the last really good way to for you to use the computer to make your choice is to use this little eyedropper. And we used the eyedropper, I think last week, wasn't it? On a photo where we were trying to do the color balance. And the challenge with this guy is to find an area that could be a neutral middle gray. Now, by middle gray, we're talking about a mid-toned shadow that has no color. And I am very challenged to find anything neutral here, because anything that's middle toned is kind of this red rock. So go grab your eyedropper, click on it one time, and it's dark black. When you click again, it goes light gray like that, no background. That means it's off. You click on it again, it's black around it. Okay, so that means it's been chosen. Click on and off just by clicking on it one and on and off. Okay, so once it's on, yes, we think snow is neutral. So if you click on snow at this point, because you want it to be white, then you get a whole nother correction, right? So the idea is you're trying to find a middle gray, but if there's no middle gray, at least try on snow, because at the very least try on white, because you want your white is what you want it to not be tinted by other stuff. So now between the computer's Kaado, still left it pretty blue, and clicking with my eyedropper on something white, I'm thinking that finally, this is a much more neutral. It's got some red, some magenta on it, but it's a bit more neutral than before, because even though I couldn't find 50% gray, the eyedropper is adapting and going, okay, so then let me use white. It's not as good as if we could find some gray, but if I can find some darker part of the snow, then that might help. Problem is that where the snow is darker, that means it's transparenting some red rock. Now look at the difference if I were to click on red rock. I'm going to click on red rock, and suddenly the whole correction is totally wrong. Okay, so ideally find a slightly darker part of your snow, which would be the nearest to, like, the edge here is a little bit darker part of the snow. Maybe over here, as long as it's not transparenting some red from the rock, that's that's nearer to a darker gray. And now I think that we have a much better color balance than we had before with all the other choices. That said, you can still keep tweaking it, and we will. We'll keep tweaking it. But that you can turn off. When you're done, you can turn off your eyedropper so that it doesn't stay at the tip. Otherwise, you're going to click clicking away, and you're going to keep changing your white balance. Okay, so white balance is not necessarily the easiest thing to understand, but it really helps us know the differences between the autos and the customs. And when we really can't figure it out, we can use these tools, and then you can keep adjusting as time goes by. So the biggest change that happened here when we hit this eyedropper is that not only did the temperature shift, but the tint that goes from green to magenta changed. So right now it's on +6, meaning it's added some magenta. If we drag it down here, it's adding green. If you drag it to the right, it's adding magenta. Somewhere very near the middle, this one usually doesn't move too much, is the right spot for it. And depending on where you click your eyedropper, it'll be a bit more or a bit less magenta. I thought mine at up +6 was a little bit red. So I'm going to down it a little bit, and I'm going to come down and take some of that magenta out and leave it a little bit more neutral. Maybe +2. I like that. It's a little bit of green there. +4. I like that. All right. So a lot of this is choices that you make. Remember, based on your monitor. Before I continue on the rest of the textures, and I take some questions, first I wanted to remind you that whatever monitor you are looking at this at will show you things differently. So don't put my numbers in, don't tap 13,000 and +4, because that might not look good on your screen. Those are the numbers that look good to me on my screen, and my screen might not be, I mean, my screen is color calibrated, but yours is probably not color calibrated. So all you can do is go by, you know, your gut and hope that your screen isn't too horrible. I told you, I think I've showed you did I show this class the monitor calibration yet?
Mm-mm.
No. Most of you guys have seen it. Some of you guys have, I returned it to my son. Did I return it to my son? Yes. Over break, I'll go get it. It's this little machine that you buy and you kind of hang it and stick it on your monitor, and it kind of runs through a whole, you say go, and it runs through a whole series of tests and checks. And when you're done, boom, it calibrates your screen and brightness and darkness and lights it in color to make it be as color correct as possible. There's a lot more than that to the whole color calibration conversation, but that's a really good start. If that's something that you are interested in pursuing, you're looking at starting with like a $350 or so investment. So it's not a cheap thing to get going. But if you're doing things like, you know, for example, Jacob, I know you sell your prints. Do you color calibrate your monitor, or are you calibrated to your printer? Oh, I'm not sure if Jacob can hear me. Does anyone here do anything? Oh, there's Jacob.
Yeah, hi. I'm out of calibration now. I'm getting ready to get a new computer, and
Mhm.
so I'm in between.
But see, he has a very professional printing setup where he fixes his photos and he prints them and he sells them. So either you have to have your computer calibrated to your printer so that what you see is what you get, right? Or if you print at a professional photo studio or something like that, then you ask them for their printer profiles and you calibrate to them. But all of this is assuming you're doing printing, where all of that matters. Here's the problem. 90% of photos now just get seen online. You know, how many of you guys have printed anything lately? It used to be that we printed all our photos. Now we print only something really special that's going to go on a wall or a present, or, you know, a couple of things here and there, but we don't print everything we do and see. 90% of what we do now in photography gets seen only online. So if so, you really have to cede control, because as much as I am seeing the photograph right now looking this color, who knows what color you are seeing, because your screen is going to look different. And that's the reality. You're going to send a photo of your kids to your mom and she's not going to go, oh, that snow looks blue. She's going to go, oh, cute photo of the kids jumping in the snow, right? But when it's a photograph that you're trying to show for, you know, professional purposes, all you can do is calibrate your monitor and then trust that yours is right. And then the rest will see whatever they will see. They will see it on their phone. They will see it on their iPad. They will see it in the sun. They will see it under their, under a shade of a tree. Wherever they see it will change that which you are working so hard to do. So you just got to hope that you did the best, and that's the best you can do. Right? We've lost control with screens out there of what people are going to see. So anyway, that's the white balance. Exposure, we can still now turn off this auto here, and notice that if we go over and disconnect our auto, our white balance has stayed the same, has been, like, if we turn it off, sorry, our white balance doesn't get affected. So at least we know that the white balance is correct now. And now we can start changing these to our heart's content without having to go with what the computer says, which you might like what the computer says, but I want you guys to learn a little bit more. We've done this once or twice. I'm going to run through some of these again. And then we're going to do a little bit of sharpening and noise information, which is under the detail tab. Sorry. down there. So clearly there's a lot of underexposure here. But before I start with these, any questions yet with color in this part? Nope. All right. So we're going to go ahead, and if we move exposure to the right, as we start moving to the right, notice that everything gets lighter. I'm going to double click on this little triangle and send it to the middle. Move it to the left and everything gets darker. Double click on the triangle, send it to the middle. Okay, so we're not going to choose a good spot for it yet. First, we're going to go look at this histogram. So once it's in the middle, this histogram here is really important. It's what is happening with the colors or the tones in the luminance tone, so to say, of your photograph. And if this end here is pure black and this is pure white, what we're finding is that all the tones in our screen are mostly dark. Like this is midpoint gray and there's almost nothing there. All of this represents what we do have in what pixels we do have. And the highest amount here of pixels, that would be our snow, is darker than middle gray. Okay, so that represents our snow. So our goal is to move this stuff near to the white. Okay, so look at those. When I move the exposure to the right, see how the snow is moving to, see how this, which represents our snow, is moving to the right. And as I move it to the right, it keeps going to the right, to the right. But what's happened now, we finally go, oh, great, our snow is white now. But look, our blacks are not black anymore. We've left, there's no little mountain here on the blacks. We have no blacks left. See that? And if we look at our photo, yeah, our snow looks white right now, but it's gone pale. Our blacks are gone. So when you move this exposure, you move the colors, the tones around really well, but you do it to everything at once, right? So I'm going to suggest that we do less of the exposure moving and more of the other moving. Now, this is so far off that we do need to bring a little bit over to the right, but I'm going to say move it over to the right as far as you don't lose any blacks. So over here on the left, at first, we start with a little black line going up. As I start moving to the right, I start moving to the right, and at some point, boom, my colors disconnect from down there, and that's too far. So let's just back up until we leave our blacks that still have a beginning. And let's say that that's the exposure correction for now. And now let's work for the rest to move the rest of our colors, because our tones, because we really don't want to lose the blacks. Okay, so that's as far as I'm going to go with exposure correction to start with. Now, contrast is a really interesting tool, but it's also too uncontrolled because it moves everything equally. The lightest things turn lighter, the darker things turn darker. So if I move this to the right, look what's happening to the histogram. Look up to in the photos. My whites are getting brighter and my darks are getting darker, right? Which might look kind of good at first. I have a bit more contrast, but it doesn't really make this whole thing look good yet. And if I move to the left, everything is getting, so look at the, not so much the photo, but look at the histogram for a second. Put your eyes on the histogram. When I go to the right, my whites stretch out and my blacks stretch out, but my whites don't make it all the way to the end. And when I go to the left, see how they contract? It's like, whoops, the mountain gets higher in the middle and I'm losing blacks and I'm losing whites. So contrast is cool for many photos, but not equally. Many times you need to do more one than the other. So we're going to manipulate these four here. I'm going to start with the shadows, which are, with the whites, okay, which are so dark right now. So I'm going to go to the whites here, and I'm going to start moving these. And remember, the whites in the histogram represent that, which is the snow. And I'm going to move my whites over. And I'm gonna start opening up my whites. And I can move them and move them and move them until they look really white and so white that there's no texture left in the snow. I've gone way past, I mean, it looks great. Suddenly there's light. But if you look here on the screen, I've gone way past the amount. So this anything that goes up the side of the edge is what we call clipped. And it means that you don't see texture anymore. So you need to back this white off until you see white, but you still see texture. And usually that coincides with the whites reaching the end, but not clipping up the hill. Now, one thing I forgot to mention before I show you the cool tricks about these sliders and the clipping and stuff is that your screen should never be set to bright. Now, this is a screen that, depending on what kind of screen you have, you can handle with buttons, or you can handle, with buttons on your screen itself. But again, I say this every so often, and I'm not sure if I said it in this class, but most people tend to have their screens really bright. If you have a Mac computer screens are even brighter than PC computers. So go to for Mac people, you can control that from the top row of your keyboard. So this is only for Mac people. These buttons right here there's the escape key, and the two next to them are little sunshine buttons. And if you click to the right, it gets really bright. And if you click this one, it's really dark. See do you see how I'm darkening or lightening my screen? You don't want to have this bright. And if you click on this and you see that you're at the brightest, please go down and see that little sun there, and go down until your brightness hits that middle line of your sun. Never go any higher than that. If you just did this for the first time and you're looking at your screen, suddenly you might think everything got really dark and you're like, oh my God, I can't see anything. How many of you have had that feeling of, whew, it got really dark? Well, first of all, this will hurt your eyes less. It'll keep you awake less. And this is much more correct. If you guys are on a PC, you might have other controls, or you might have actually button controls for your desktop kind of monitors, but for your laptops, go into your settings display and change the brightness there. Your brightness you don't want overwhelming light coming through, or it's hard to gauge. And now suddenly things look even darker or lighter than you had them before. So that's important to start with. All right. So if I move my whites to the right, I got to find a way to know that I'm not losing the texture, because over here I have some snow texture, but here I lost it. And there has to be a better way than me just guessing. And there is. And I'm going to double click back to put this in the middle. And now I'm going to pull that same slider, but I'm going to hold down the Alt key for the PC or the Option key for the Mac. And when I start pulling this slider, everything went black. Everything went black. And I'm moving it to the right. At some point, I start seeing some weird little drops or dip dots of light. And I get to the end and I have a ton of them. So, and this is because I'm holding down the Alt Option key. When I let go of the Alt Option key, I'm just seeing it. When I hold down the Alt Option key, I see black. And you have to go to the right until you start seeing those little drops of light. And those little drops of light that you're seeing there, and I can't let go of my mouse because if I let go, this stops. Keep an eye over here on this area and you'll see where you're beginning to see some light, and that's where it's the most. And what that means is that this is my brightest whites, the first ones that go into that edge where they get clipped. So by holding down this Option key, you begin to see them. And the moment you see them, that's kind of where you need to stop. You don't want more than that. And that's as far as you can go on your 70. Another way to see this is to actually go to these little triangles here at the top and clip on it one time. Once it's clipped on, once you start going past where it's right, then you start seeing your whole image have these bright red spots. See that? And that's equivalent. It's your warning that you have white that's clipped, white that has no detail, meaning it's gone so white that if you print this, what you'll get here is paper white. It's basically the photo paper is what you'll be seeing, because there's no ink. So you back off until you see none of those little white things. Now, I find many times that if you have little tiny ones of those, they might not show up, like you might not notice them. So I prefer the slider and not to have these on all the time, but while you're learning, maybe you would like to have these on all the time. It's your choice. I prefer not to have them on, but at least it warns me if I'm making other changes, I'll see that red there and I'll know that that's what I need to back off until I get none of those little red spots. So somewhere between 68 and 69 seems to be the sweet spot for me, for my whites. But be warned that if I move my highlights, for example, which are also light tones, that might kick my whites into the bad area. So I'm going to move my highlights now. I'm going to lighten my highlights. And as I'm lightening my highlights, what's happening now, and I don't have too many highlights in this photo, believe it or not, I have it's all white, but there's nothing big, bright reflecting at me. But if I move my highlights to the right, all my histogram begins to go to the right, and suddenly I start having red spots here in my clipping, okay? And I move it again over there in the same spot, okay? So clearly I can't do too much work with one slider without it affecting the other, okay? So anyway, the highlights isn't making that much of a difference here. I'm gonna drag it a little bit to the right. And then the shadows, you can decide if the whole thing is still too dark to lighten the whole thing up by brightening the shadows. So I'm gonna brighten the shadows a little bit. So from there to here. So look at what's happening up here. The middle tones are moving to the right, but my black is still staying black. I'm still having a little bit of black. And in fact, I can make my black get a little bit darker if I want some more contrast. So anyway, by moving these around, I end up with a very contrasty image with whites that are not, and I keep looking over there to see if I have some whites that are not too off. Maybe I can lighten the shadows a little bit more, and so on and so forth. And if you still feel maybe it's a little bit dark, then maybe you can move the exposure up a little more. Some people like lighter photos, but then be careful because you need to darken the others. So the moment you move this, you affect the others. Anyway, so I'm not going to move that. I'm going to back that one back to 1. Any choice very different than mine? Any question you have about these sliders? No questions? Have y'all tried using this RAW for any of your photos yet, even if you don't shoot RAW? It's really important for you guys to practice this, because this is one of the best ways to process your photo. And by the way, for those of you who are Lightroom users, Lightroom and Photoshop Elements users, RAW is in all of these programs, in Photoshop, Bridge, Lightroom, and Adobe and Photoshop Elements. And it is the same for all of us. So you can become more easily bilingual, so to say, if you fix your photos in the system, because it applies to so many different programs. All right, no questions? Now, for the rest of these, we're going to move into texture and color. When it comes to texture, it's important to consider the percentage, just like focus, because it's about the detail, right? So for the general coloring that I've been doing, I've been fitting it down. It's not been 100%. And so for vibrance and saturation, it's still color and light, so we can still look at it in high. But when we go into texture, clarity, or dehaze, this is going to work on the details of my photo. So for that, I need to see it at 100% again, okay? So anyway, let's head down first to color, which is vibrance and saturation. You might think that you got everything you want out of these colors, but I mean, come on, look at how bright those colors are right there. But there's two different settings. This is a very, very, very saturated, intense orange in there. If you move the saturation slider to the right, everything is going to get more saturated. The rocks, the snow, and the very saturated water. As I move it to the right, and I'm going to move this to the right, you might see that moving it to the right gives us more color on the rocks, but it's blowing this little river into, or puddle, into neon type of proportions. Okay, I'm going to double click to move it out. But also notice something interesting, that as I move my saturation to the right, interestingly enough, my blacks suddenly clipped. See over here? I'm going to double click that, because to saturate my colors might darken them. And so some of my blacks turned even blacker. And so that affected my histogram, and you don't want any clipped colors. So anyway, this is definitely the kind of photo where saturation does not work, but vibrance is great for. So usually you want to have one or the other. When colors are all washed out, saturation works well. But when you have some colors that are vibrant and some colors that are not, vibrance ignores the vibrant colors, it lets them be, and only saturates that which is not saturated already. So as I move vibrance to the right, my rocks are beginning to get more of that red color, but it's not driving my little puddle crazy. But I'm getting much more orange on these rocks than I had before. And I kind of like that, because it reminds me of the color of where we are. So I'm going to double click to come down to the middle. Keep an eye on like this portion of rock right there. And then move your vibrance all the way to the end suddenly, so you can really see the change. See that? I like going all the way to the end to see the real change, going back to the middle, and then finding that in-between place that might be good or not good for you. And in fact, this is one where going quite far to the right might help to get some nice orange colors here to help reflect in there. Just don't want color on the snow to get too intense, really red. But on the other hand, this is reflecting its surroundings, and it's reflecting the big wall of rock that it has right here. It's okay if it gets a little bit red. I'm kind of talking you through the thought processes here, but you're welcome to have, questions and opinions and things that you want to ask based on what we're saying, what I'm saying. You all seem quite quiet today. Yes?
I thought in one of our earlier classes, you mentioned the difference between vibrance and saturation is that vibrance didn't change the skin tones.
Yes, we don't have a human here. So good point. When we pull up my son, that's another of the huge advantages of vibrance. It has the fact that it saturates all of the colors proportionally. So they reach equal levels of saturation. So it doesn't saturate what's already saturated, and it saturates more what isn't. But if you have a human in there, it also protects human skin tones. And I say human with apostrophes because I don't know how politically correct, or in fact, social justice issues and stuff like that, Photoshop equations, I have no idea how it decides what is considered human skin tone, because you'd think some of these colors here might be human skin tone when they're not saturated. Not this photo, but there's other photos where Arches has this really, kind of pinkish glow to the background. So I don't know how it distinguishes between one and another, or browns or blacks, but the theory is, the word is that skin tone gets protected, and you'll see it if you do raw, when we do later with my son, and you use vibrance, everything else is going to get vibrant, but the skin is not going to go bright orange. It's going to keep it neutral. Okay. So that's what it does. So vibrance has those two jobs: to protect already saturated colors and to protect skin tone, and to not saturating and not becoming like a bright orange peach. So yeah, thanks for that, that comment. So everyone needs to know Vibrance has those two important jobs. How's it going, guys? Is your photo looking? Do you have any idea what it looked like before? We've gotten so accustomed to this. Reason I'm asking is because we have a couple different ways to see the before and afters. First of all, if you look at this little eyeball, this eyeball is for the entire basic thing. See, it's an eyeball for that whole basic thing. The rest are gray because we've done none of the rest. We've only done basic. So if I were to just, and I close it so you can really see that it's for all of basic, I open it again. If I click on this and hold it down, I see where it was before, and then let go of my mouse and I see where it is now. Click on this guy before, let go of my mouse now. Pretty cool, right? Another way to do that, hit the letter P, P, and then P again. It's before and after, before and after. Now the difference is that right now with this eyeball, we're turning off basic. Once we do a few other things, you can turn on and off each other individually, but the P will go before and after all of them. Okay, not just basic. Right now we only have, right now they seem identical, but in the future they won't be identical. So that's that eyeball. Now, if you want to see them match side by side, then you click on this little bottom button left. There's two different guys here. The one on the left cycles the before and after. And you click on it again, and now, oh, click on it again. I didn't mean to. Before and after, top and bottom. And then we're back into the after. Okay. So it cycles 5 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, I got. I messed with the preview preferences. You can change them, but never mind. Okay. Let's go back.
Diana.
I don't know why it's showing me before and after right now. Hold on. I clicked on my before and after is not. It's not. There we go. Yes. What's the question?
Is there any case where you're just showing where you can do side by side? Is there any case where you can do side by side and be
Yeah.
working on the one that you want to correct while looking at the other?
Yeah. So the letter Q. But the problem is that right now I clicked on this thing in the middle, and when I was doing it, which is not what I wanted, and it switched to right now my befores and afters are not. Right now my before and after is showing the same, and it's when I was showing you the versions I was looking up and I clicked on this thing, which flipped it, and I'm trying to figure out how to unclip that, but I can't. So right now my before and after suddenly is looking like after and after. And I'm trying to figure out why it did that. Ah, there we go. Okay. That's interesting. I clicked on this by mistake. So I'm going to show you once again, because this might be happening to you too. When you cycle all the way to the end, you get having one little box again, okay? But when you start clicking on it, you have these choices here, which mess you up because this thing moves out. And as you keep clicking on it, okay, so 5 times it goes down. See that? So just watch my screen for a second. That box is 1. When I click on it, this didn't exist before, right? And so the box that I want to keep going through is the first one. These two, I kept clicking and I clicked here. So what happens is that the current settings turned into before and afters, and that's why it was a hard one to choose. So don't click on any of these again. Keep going down the first one, and that's the one that keeps cycling. Or if you keep clicking Q, 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 Q. That's a bit safer. Okay. And then you keep working. Now, Leslie, was it you who asked for the before and after? I don't recommend working here because you see the before and after and you go, whoa, it's so much better, right? And many times it's subtle, not like this, right? It's just a little bit more. So you kind of want to see, did I like it before or after? But once you're decided which one you like, keep hitting your cues until you go back to normal. Because in the end, this is the only thing that people are going to see. People are not going to see your befores and afters. People are going to see the after. Okay. So that's where you want to keep working on. And yes, it's good when you're not sure if a subtle change was better or worse to do the before and after. For the most part, it's better to, so I would say use it temporarily to check in, but not to work on it while it's on. So the letter P, and I'm writing it on the chat on the keyboard, is a default settings from beginning to now. And I'm writing toggles the default settings from the beginning until now. Oh, so P goes straight in to show you what you started from now. So everything, right? Versus the letter Q. And I'm going back into the chat. The letter Q is the before and after. Oh, can't. I messed up because I was trying to write in the chat and instead it affected my changes. So I'm going to undo whatever just got done. There we go. I was trying to write in the chat and instead it flipped my whole screen. Okay, so the letter Q, wow. I'm trying to write in the chat, but my camera raw is taking the Q to mean that I'm trying to change the Q. So I'm not going to write in the camera raw right now. I'm trying to write in the chat, but it keeps making the Q happen, which is driving me crazy. So I'm going to stop. I don't know why it won't. Yep. I'm trying to hit the delete and it says image will be removed to the trash. So forget it. Okay. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to let this be. So I messed up because by hitting that letter, see how it says image will be moved to the trash? It's because I messed up by trying to click right in the chat. So I'm going to stop doing that. Okay. I'm going to stop doing that and ignore that information. All right. So I'm done with most of the color stuff. I still think it's a little bit magenta-y, but I also think it's magenta-y because of the situation. But if I question whether it's too much magenta, I can back off a little bit here and take a little bit magenta off and see if I like it better, which I might. So yeah. Okay. So I told you that it's time to go to 100%. So I'm going to click over here to 100% so that we can start looking at the details. So now that we've done some color work, when you look at this, see, scroll around a little bit until you look to this area here where you see these rocks and this puddle of water. Do you see some kind of a texture, some kind of a pattern in here that maybe should or shouldn't be there, that is or isn't natural to the rock? Just explore it for a little bit and tell me what you think. Oops. I went to, in the past, we've done these color basics, but we haven't moved into the sharpening and the noise and all of that. So I want to see what you guys think. No answer there? No thoughts of your
Are
own?
you talking about lens? A dirty lens or something?
No.
Just that the
Look
rocks have
for a
noise to
second,
'em.
look for a second to this little puddle area. At 100%, make sure you're 100%. Look at this little puddle area. Do you see like something that on this that doesn't look like water? Do you see like little dots, like a little
Mhm.
pattern?
Like a lot of noise.
Noise.
Yeah. That's noise. That grainy thing we're seeing, that's what we call noise. So some people said it looks pixelated, has some red distortions. The looks pixelated is, if you're seeing it at 100%, is what the distinction between pixelated, if you're at 100%, you cannot see the pixels ever. What you will see, if you still see little dots and stuff like that, that's what we call noise. Okay, grain. So when the photograph is shot in low light, which this is a very low light situation, the camera has to add noise because it lowers the ISO. So the photo becomes what we used to call grainy. Now we call it noisy. It get these little dots in the shadow areas. If you look at the snow, it might still be there, but it's not so visible. It's not that it's not there, but you really see it when it gets darker. So in these bright areas, if you now pay attention, you will see it, but it's harder to distinguish as opposed to in the shadowy areas. So you saw it here in the water. Now move your eyes into the rock and see how that pattern is still there. It's still noisy. There's that little overlined texture there that doesn't belong to a real human world. Your eyes don't see that little texture. And it's the same everywhere. That's when you know it's noise, when there's no distinction between that pattern here and here. So one of the problems with noise is that the more we sharpen the details of a photograph, the more noise will appear. Okay. And so if you want to add any of these texture or clarity or any of these guys here, they will also probably increase the noise. So let's see. We're at 100%. We have 0 on all of these 3. And let's just do one at a time. Again, just to see what texture does, I'm going to go way to the far right. And if you didn't see the noise before, you should really see it now. Move your texture way to the far right. Do you really see this whole like tiny little pattern of specks on everything? Hopefully I'm not getting many like nodding faces or anything, but you see what I mean? Double click on texture and bring it down. When you see it quick, when you see a real intense thing like that, you really notice the difference. Now, I don't like that it brought out the noise. So is there anything about it that I do like? If I look at the ripples in the water here, if I look at the rock that has a bit of texture like this, move it again, way to the right. Yeah, look at how much more textured that rock is. It's pretty cool. But I don't want to increase the texture of that rock in exchange for the increase of all that fake texture that isn't part of the photo. I'm going to double click again. The opposite of taking away texture is, oh, it looks like hazy and smooshy and ghosty. So if you like it as an effect for something in particular, but otherwise that looks horrible. Everything's smoothed out. I'm going to double click. So anyway, if you're going to increase texture, as usually do it gently. But I think that until we get rid of this noise, there's not much to be gained by adding texture to this photo. So I'm going to double click and let it go back to 0. First, it looks like we need to deal with the noise. I just want to show you that, how these things increase noise. So you have to be careful with them. Let's go to clarity. Clarity is also, I'm going to click and drag to the right. And look at what it did. It increased. What got increased by clarity? You guys tell me. What do you think got increased? If I do that, what seems to have happened to the photos?
It got contrasty.
Yes, it got very contrasty, meaning Look at the darker areas, they got darker. See, the rock is getting darker. And the white
Right. Wider.
got a little bit whiter. But the difference with clarity and contrast is that contrast just brightens all the tones. Clarity instead goes into the detail. So look at snow. Look at this patch of snow. Keep your eyes on one patch of snow. Choose a patch of snow to look at. Actually, this one's a bit closer. I'm going to increase clarity to the max suddenly. And suddenly the snow is very rugged. It's every single speck of snow got a little bit of contrast against the other. So some little specks of snow become brighter, some little specks of snow grow darker. So suddenly I have a very rough texture of snow because clarity goes into the detail and gives contrast to the details, to the actual pixels, the darker or lighter pixels. So suddenly everything got more rugged. Now, if you want some of that, that doesn't actually make noise necessarily bigger. Texture did. It just makes it more obvious because all texture got more obvious, right? So again, it's something to consider for this photo, a little bit of clarity, but first we're going to leave it at 0 and we're going to go deal with that noise that's been bugging me before we can actually do something about these sliders. Then the last one is dehaze. Dehaze tends to be for stuff that's kind of cloudy, mountains in the background or stuff that's a little bit off. It doesn't look like we need too much here. It's kind of a combination between texture and clarity. You turn it on and discover that it's doing something similar to clarity and texture at the same time. It kind of gives you also some color distortions and weirdness here. So again, look here, suddenly the snow is brown. So anyway, we're gonna double click it and leave it 0. Some photographs do really well with any of these. Each one depends on the photo. I'm gonna keep them all at 0 until I can get rid of some of that noise. And then we'll see if it makes sense to add any of these to the photo. Now I'm gonna head back to fit this photo and screen and show you why I couldn't have done this at 0 at 100. I had to do it at 100%. Because if I now increase texture, right in here, right? I increase the texture at 0%. It just looks really good. I double click and I look and I go decrease texture. I look at this rock and I increase texture and I go, woo, I like all that texture in the rock. That looks really good, right? So from afar, these things look good and you can put a ton of them on without paying attention to the fact that at 100%, it's not really doing a good job. Does that make sense? So these 3 are dangerous. If you increase clarity, suddenly it's like, ooh, I like that little contrast. I like that texture. I like that dehaze. Oh, this is, you know, the last one actually doesn't work at all, but you might like it, but you're not really paying attention to what's happening at pixel level. So let's remember always that for these, you need to be at pixel, not at pixel level, but at 100% at normal zoom point. Okay, so I'm gonna close basic for now, just by clicking on the word basic or clicking on that little triangle. And we're going to open detail. We're going to give a big, looking at the time, it's time for our break. So what we're going to do is before we start on detail, we're going to save this. Now, how do we save this? Well, in a normal photograph, saving it would mean that you would change it in your computer, in your Photoshop. You would make a new file on your computer. But because it's raw, what happens is that when you say done, what will happen is that this photo is going to go back to Bridge without opening in Photoshop, but it will incorporate all of the changes that we just added in a non-destructive way. It's just going to change in the code. It's going to have a file next to it that we won't see. It's a hidden file that will have these numbers that we just dialed in to make us see it the next time we open it looking like this. And we can keep changing. So it's the extreme, the epitome of non-destructive modifications. Raw can always be added and changed. So I'm going to go ahead and say done now. We're not going to go to any of the other choices. Say done. And when we go back to Bridge, those of you who are at home, yeah, I thought I did this weird thing where when I hit those, see how it kept saying this image is going to go into the trash. It kept saying that for me because I clicked when I was doing the queue, I kind of deleted the photo and it was warning me that it was about to go into the trash. And I was worried. And yeah, see how it removed it from here. I don't know how to fix that other than that I'm going to put the photo in there again. But that was weird because I was clicking around trying to write in the chat and I got rid of the photo. So those of you, it should be here under R. For those of you who did it at home, you have it there and it's changed. For those of us who did not, I'm going to have to upload it again. So I'm going to do that right now during our break so that we can keep using it. And yeah, weirdness is happening. I don't know why. Did that, by the way. I've just sent you all a link. For a second. Of the photo, the other photo that we were going to use today, I sent you an email so that if you have a photo, if you couldn't open that photo, I'm going to go into my, you don't see it, but I'm going into my drive and I'm uploading the photo again. Because those of you who are working on VDI, that photo kind of disappeared for all of us because of, I hit, let me go back to the name. Where's that photo? Oh, I have it here. Fortunately, I had downloaded it yesterday. Here it is. So I just put it in there again, but it won't have the corrections. So I'm going to go do the corrections really quickly. Okay, so somebody called out my name.
I did, Diane, Charlene.
Yes.
So when I said done, it opened it up in Photoshop, not in Bridge. Is that correct?
No, opens it up in Photoshop. Done closes it and does not open it in Photoshop. Open opens it in Photoshop. Done should just close your file. Is so if it opened up in Photoshop, then just close it from Photoshop right now. And if you go back to Bridge, you'll see that in Bridge, it'll be there. Did you guys, are you using your own program, right? Charlene,
Yeah.
or VDA? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you wouldn't have been able to. So yeah. So
Yeah, it didn't do that with me. It did save it. Not just.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm not sure. You probably clicked on open is my guess. I'm not sure that that's what happened. The photo is uploading again for those of you who are on VDI. The photo is almost done uploading. There it is. It's done uploading. So if you're in Photoshop and if you're in Bridge, go ahead and go back to it by resetting. So up here in Photoshop class files, see how it's there again. Up in Photoshop class files, you can click back on Photoshop shared drive and then double click again to Photoshop class files. And I'm talking to the people who have this on their own. And then it should be popping in by now. Okay, so I'm going to very quickly open it up again to make the same changes. And then when I save it, you guys, since you're all working off of the same version as me, the changes that'll be saved are my changes, okay? And I'm just saying that because this didn't not change. This was just us. I'm gonna really quickly do the corrections that I had done. I think I had gone only to 1 plus for exposure, and I had the whites a little bit more around the 65. I think I had darkened that a little bit. And I had added some vibrance. I think that's about where we had it. I don't remember exactly, but that sounds about right. Okay, so I'm going to do this again. You have open, which opens it into Photoshop. You have done, that returns it. It applies changes and dismisses the photo, but it does not open. Or cancel, where you lose everything you've done. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and say done. And now when I go into Bridge, if I look at that same photograph, let me scroll back to it. There it is. It's sporting its new colors, and it's showing me these little icon right here, which means it's been edited in RAW. So that is all that tells me that there's an XMP file. There's a file attached to this file now. My file hasn't been changed at all, but there's a little file attached to it that says, oh, you have to look this way. It's telling it how to look. And it's just computer information telling this photograph, your pixels need to look this way to look like snow instead of like mud or whatever they looked like. And yet the pixels itself aren't affected. So it's very non-destructive. Everything in RAW is non-destructive. Okay, now you don't have to worry about this being 2 files. Bridge deals with all of these fact that it's 2 files and the other one is hidden and stuff like that. It's an XML file that we call it a sidecar file that now Ryan, unable to save conversion settings. So if you were working on your own, on your own version, so anyone who was working on VDI, you're not able to save your own because you're still working off of mine. And mine I had deleted. And so now that I put it in there, just start from this one next time, because we're all still working off of mine. Does that make sense? Because you're still in the shared drive. All right, so let's take our first break. I would say first break as if I gave you tons of break. I don't know why. I used to, well, sometimes I do teach long classes and I do give 2 breaks, but what time is it? It's 1:42. So we'll meet at 1:58. No, got that wrong. Somebody help me 15 minutes from now. 1:40, 55, 57. Oh, not so bad. 1:58, 1:57. And be back. Okay. See you guys soon. Hello, hello. I'm back. If somebody's back, let me know you can hear me. All right. I see some
I hear you.
faces turn on. Cool. There you go. That's what I need. It's like I hear like, you know, when you hear nothing, but there's a difference between hearing silence and hearing deadness in the moment someone speaks, then it kind of turns on. And then I hear the basic silence. I don't know. It's weird. I need someone to speak for it to trigger that I start hearing. It's
I'm here, but I'm eating.
that's fine. I actually picked up my coffee. So, all right. So, guys, between here and next week, I want to challenge you all to open a photo in RAW, any photo of yours, and see what you can do with it. Don't just sit through this class and it won't percolate into your being until you start having your own issues. And, you know, I can show you a sample photo 2 or 7, and it won't make a difference until you really have to deal with the issues yourself. Okay. So if you go and if you don't have a raw photo, you can open one of the raw photos. There are many in this set of samples that we haven't used in class, or you can open anything. It doesn't need to be raw. Let me share my screen. So we're going to continue with this photo with the noise and all that, but I'm picking up here the an example of, you know, the one that's right next to it was as a JPEG. If I wanted to work on this one in RAW and I double click, it won't open, remember? But if I right click and open Camera Raw, it will open in RAW. And when I'm done registering and I'm done working with it, you'll say done like we did this time. And up here, it'll show just like that one. It'll show these little, let me put my spotlight on. It'll show these, this little icon. That means it'll have been edited in RAW, even if it's JPEG. And from then on, every time you double click on that JPEG, it'll open in RAW, right? Because by then it'll be considered a file that you can access its raw data. So once you've right-clicked and open in RAW once and move some edits, once you close it, then you can just double click it and it'll forcefully open in RAW because it's been edited in RAW. Now, what we're going to do with the photo of the headshot, which, by the way, for those of you who couldn't find it in here, I emailed it to you during break. The first thing I said during break is I emailed you this headshot. For those of you who are not on VDI, if perchance you didn't go and download it, I emailed it. And you will open this in Photoshop, and then we will use RAW from inside of Photoshop. Okay, so we're using RAW in 2 different ways. But first, let's head back into this sunset arches and double click that guy. And there we go. And it opens up again. By the way, if you have a window that's kind of floating like this or is small in front of your Photoshop, it becomes so hard to understand what the edges are. So click on this little double-headed arrow at the top right, and that makes it fill your screen. If you're on a Mac, the buttons are here on this side, and it's the green button, and it fills your screen. That way, when you're in RAW, you don't have to see everything else, and you can see this file as big as you want. Another thing that I haven't shown you yet is that if you click down here on this little icon way at the bottom next to the 100%, then you can see this little kind of a film strip where you see one photo right now because it's all we have. Click on the icon to the right of where it says 100% and it disappears. For some of you who have small screens, if you don't need to see the little thumbnail, you click on that again and it goes out of your vision. Let me show you, and I'm going to cancel now. Let me show you what's the point of that film strip. What if you decided to open 2 or 3 different RAW files? So I'm going to click on this one. in Bridge now. I'm gonna hold down my command key if you're on the Mac, control key if you're on the PC, to click on another CR2, which is this one. So these are 2 Bridge files. And then on one more, which is this one. So now I've clicked on 3 different files. So if the files are next to you and you click Shift, you can keep clicking many. But if the file is not next to you, like that one, in order to get non-contiguous files at the same time, you have to do Command for the Mac, Control for the PC, and then you can keep clicking. And now I've got 3 non-contiguous files chosen. Okay, so then I'll right click and I'll open in Camera Raw. These are all raw files, so I could have done this with a JPEG as well, but I happen to choose 3 raw files. And see down here how they're showing up as a all 3 that are open. If I close with this click to not see them, I'm seeing only one at a time, and there's no way to know what else is open. So by clicking on this little icon, I can go from that one to this one to this one. So I can work on all 3 at the same time. Now, these are all 3 very different files, so probably I wouldn't need to open 3 very different files at the same time. But many times you have the same photo, slightly different angle, slightly different aperture, different zoom of the same-ish thing. And so if you open all 3, then you can make modifications on one, and then the same settings apply. You can apply them to all 3, okay? We don't have 3 of the same, so it would make no sense to apply these settings to that one or to that one, you know what I mean? But that would be a good example of why, and this is how you would flip from file to file when you're opening more than one, all right? So you can copy all your edit settings, right? And then apply them. I'm gonna go to this other one, and I can paste edit settings. So now this photo got edited with the same settings, which look horrible on this photo, right? But you get the idea. You edit one, and then to 4 or 5 more of the same lighting situation, you paste all the settings, and then you adapt, because probably this one has a little bit more, a little bit less. See what I mean? So let me show you that again. You go to the one that already has settings that you've edited. Imagine these are versions of the same thing. I click on these 3 little dots, copy, edit settings. I can also copy only some, like only the color balance or only the whatever, but I'm just going to copy all of them. I select the next one, and I just right click on, not right click, just click on the 3 little dots and then just paste them.
Can you
And then
only do that when off the film strip, or can you go back to Bridge and select it?
I don't know. I'll go, I don't think I've ever tried, but I can easily find out by checking in Bridge in a second. So anyway, for now, let me paste it up in here. And so here's a photo edited again with that very yellow settings, which makes it look horrible, but there we go. Now, Control Z or Command Z, because I don't want these to stick. Control or Command Z on this one, because I don't want that to stick either. And I'm going to cancel those changes. And now let me go into Bridge and see. Can I right click? And I believe there was a way to copy the settings. I do believe that there was a way, and I can't remember how.
When it's open?
When it's not open. Right now I'm in Bridge. Oh, develop settings. No, you can just clear them or go back to camera defaults, but it doesn't look like you can copy them from Bridge. There is a way though. I'm pretty sure there's a way, and I don't. I don't know the answer right now. I'm pretty sure there's a way, but I don't know it off the top of my head.
I was just curious. That's
Yeah,
it.
no, but it makes sense. That's a good question. That's why I wanted to try to answer it, because I thought a right click would do it, but there must be some other place where you go and copy settings from or something that I can't right now.
And in
Did
Camera
I-
Raw, you can't save as, correct? Like, the problem that came up was because it was on the share folder. I can't save it to my folder.
Actually, no, not right now. Because of this whole weird system we have. What you can do is you can go into your Google Drive, right? Just go into your window and then
Copy and paste or
copy it
something.
from there and drag it into your Google Drive.
Right.
Okay, and then you get to keep it and open it from there. Normally, the idea is that once you open it, you can save an output file and stuff like that, or you can open into Photoshop and have your own, which is what we're going to do next, but not this one from Bridge itself. You can't, I mean, you could right click and copy this one from here, actually, now that I think about it, just right click and copy. Everyone who's on VDI, let's do this so that you begin to have your own. So that's a good point. Everyone, VDI people, Bridge, right click on this photo and say copy. Okay, could also duplicate and then drag it, but I think copy is enough. Then here on the left side, we're going to have to leave Photoshop class files. So we'll go over to Google Drive on the very top where you see Google Drive, click on Google Drive, then go to My Drive and go into your Photoshop classwork folder and then right click and paste. And here you will have the photo that I've been working on. So right now what you copied is my settings, the quick ones that I finished setting, so to say, at the last minute. And now when you open it, you will be opening your own version. Okay, does anyone need me to explain that again? You all figured it out? So now you can just, so these are all the files that we've been working in the past, and now you have this one, but this one from now on, if you want, you can change the name. Now, when you double click and open it from here, this is truly working from your own drive. All right, so let's do that. Everyone now open from wherever you want, your own computers or from this copied one into your own drive, and you'll see how the settings stay. Now, if you guys want to adapt it, whatever you did on the version that you had worked when it wasn't your own, you're welcome to adapt it again. I kind of, since I had lost mine, I quickly changed things again to this point. If someone got lost with that explanation, let me know. Otherwise, I'll keep going. How are we doing with that? Yeah, okay. All right. So let's close up the basic by clicking on the word basic. And let's open details. Now, if you've never used details before, it opens up like this. If you have used it and opened some other stuff, you'll see more. So let me see what I mean by that. The very basic use of details, which many times is enough, is a quick sharpening, noise reduction, and color noise reduction. So many times that's all you need. Before we do any of this, all works on the detail of the photo. So what do you think we should be doing to this image?
Doing it at 100%.
Yes, 100%. Notice that my mouse by default, when I'm in Zoom, is this little zoom. This icon here is the magnifying glass. So you don't need to keep going down to 100%. You can just click here and get to 100%. Okay. So, and then hold your space bar and drag yourself somewhere. And I think this here is good because it shows us water, rock, and snow. So this seems to be a good spot. And the goal is to try to eliminate this noise while still seeing the details of the photo. Like when I want to do sharpening, noise reduction, and color noise reduction, just from here, so let's remember this is 40, 0, and 25. Those are the default settings. Okay. So 40, 0, and 25 doesn't mean that something has already been applied to it. It's just they start already with a little bit of sharpening, no noise, and a little bit of color noise reduction. So that's just what happens if you don't have anything. If you've used it before, your settings already might appear differently. It might already be remembering the last settings used. So what if I want more of the sharpening options? I click on this little arrow here. This time it's on the left. And I have many more choices under sharpening. I click on this little arrow and it closes up again. Noise reduction, click this arrow and I have 3 other choices for noise reduction. Close that up. Color noise reduction, click on this guy, 3 more choices, close that up. Now we're going to use a few of those others. So just to make things simple, I'm going to open them all up. I'm going to open up sharpening, open up noise reduction, and open up color reduction. So this would be the most we can get out of the detail tab. Does that make sense? But many times you don't want all of that, so you don't need them all open, and that's why they offer them to you closed up. So let's assume, and I'm gonna not work on sharpening yet. I'm gonna go to noise first, because the problem with sharpening is that if you sharpen, by the way, for those of you who haven't experienced that word before, I just say sharpen as if it made sense. If you've never used that, it means to add more focus to your photo. Okay, you sharpen it, you make it pop. So really what you're doing in technical terms is you're faking the fact that if the photo was a little bit soft, you're fake adding a little bit of sharpness to it with Photoshop. Or if it was very sharp, then you can add an extra amount of sharpness that makes it almost jump out at you. That thorn that's about to, you know, from the plant about to hit you can become dangerously about to get you. So something sharp gets even sharper. Something that's a little bit off, you can sharpen. If it's blurry, guys, there's nothing. If it's already blurry, you can't get it to be sharp. There's all these filters you can apply. The newest version of Photoshop is doing an amazing job of sharpening stuff that was really blurry. So if you do sharpen something that's really off here, you might discover, wow, it does actually, there's a filter for it where you actually get more sharpening. But for the most part, unless it's a really important photo that you really don't dare waste, you should just go with photos that are sharp or almost sharp. So here we have the problem that if we sharpen, all the noise is going to sharpen also, as if it was texture on the rock, and it's going to get more prominent. So I'm going to first try to reduce some noise before I add some sharpening, okay? So here we have noise reduction, and keep an eye. I'm actually going to exaggerate. I'm going to go to the 100% here, and I'm going to go up to like 400%, just so that we can really see what we're talking about here. So we're mixing a little bit the pixels here with the sharpening, with the noise. But see this texture here. Now we do have something called pixelation going into this, but there's also noise. So just watch now at 400%. If I reduce noise, let me go all the way to the middle. See how much smoother it got? Now notice that I'm still 400%. So I'm still seeing pixelation, right? But this noise smoothed out tremendously. So that goes to show you the difference between noise and pixelation. If I move this noise all the way to 100%, it becomes so smooth it looks like it's plastic. It's like it's gone. There's no detail left, right? So there is such a thing as removing too much noise is tremendously possible. Okay, so from nothing to, you know, everything, you've altered this photo tremendously, and you can even see that at 100%. So now I'm going to go back to 100%. Actually, because my screen, I could probably get away with 200% because my screen is high res, so I can show you guys better. You're seeing the noise now, you're not seeing the pixelation. So now if I move to about 50, see how it's already smoothed out the noise, but look at the rocks. I'm losing detail on the rocks. The water looks like it's this like little bit of plasticky thingy. And yeah, forget it. If I go to 100%, then it doesn't even look like it's real. So we have to be very careful with noise reduction. I'm going to back to 0, and you have to raise it gently up gently up. If you have a high res monitor, you can go up to 200% for this part, and it would still not show you the pixels, and it'll show you the noise well. And slowly move it up until you don't see the noise anymore. And then you click here and there until you don't see it anymore. And then you look at that number and you go, okay, if that's the max, how much do I back off to get back the detail that I do want, right? So this is getting pretty smooth right now. And I keep going a little bit more and it's smoothing out even more. So I want to see what's the max that I need to go to be able to say, well, there's no more noise, right? And I'm getting to about, I'm finding that in the end, it's about 50 or so percent, maybe even a bit more. You guys do it, don't go by numbers. Learn to read your own screen. And I'm noticing, I mean, I would have to go a lot for it to be tremendously smooth, but I think that by 50% or so, no, I still have noise. Let me go really big here. 75%, I don't have any noise. So yeah, this photo has a lot of noise, so it's hard. So say that it takes up to 75 points to really reduce the noise, right? Which is a huge amount. But if I go back to 100%, or in this case, to 200% as my noise, let me go back to 100%. I still do, and that's a ton of noise reduction at 74%. I still do have texture on things, so it doesn't look that crazy, right? But, and I'm going to scroll up again here where I can see some snow, some of the rock texture. But let's work on these other two, or at least this detail one here, to see if we can make it worse or better, and maybe we can reduce how much we need to do. This detail here, by default, mine is saying 50. I don't know what yours said. I'm going to bring it down to 0. And notice that when you bring it down to 0, let me actually, I think just to show you guys the changes, 200 would be better, because otherwise it's hard on this video screen to show it too. So here I have a big high noise reduction of 75 and 0 in detail. Okay. So what detail is going to do is as I bring it up, it's going to say, okay, go ahead and give me noise reduction on the things, but avoid giving me detail. Detail meaning each pixel against each pixel. So watch, as I move, and I'm going to move detail up 100%. So you see the difference. When I went all the way up 100% in detail, the noise didn't get so much worse, but this got much better. So keep an eye on this. I'm going to bring this down again. So here's 0% of detail. See how it all got smoothed out, that it looks a little bit plasticky? Now I'm going to go extreme, which is the other side, 100%. And I kept the detail. And in fact, it's almost bringing up more detail than before, but I'm not getting the noise back. See that? So where am I? Here we go. So this is, you know, we maybe, again, you don't want to go as far as you can to start with. You start going up, you preserve, what you're saying is I want to preserve the detail. I want the noise to reduce in the general expanses of the photo, but don't reduce the noise that's on the edges of detail so that I can still see my detail, right? So you're kind of raising it and saying, I keep, so you're asking to keep noise. You're telling it not to get rid of all your noise in a way, which is weird. But what you're doing is you're saying, keep all your smoothingness that you're doing and keep it. And if you're getting confused with the other sliders, you can close sharpening and color noise reduction just to be in reduction. Sliders are similar and it might be confusing to you at first. So let's just make sure that we're only moving the noise reduction ones. So now I've raised the noise reduction a lot, but then I've protected the detail a lot as well. So I get back my detail, yet if I look at the water and I look at the rocks, I don't see any noise there. It's pretty cool, right? Now, You could also protect it in the contrast, just move to the right and see what you see and see if it makes any difference. And I'm not liking when I do the contrast, I'm actually seeing noise again. Of course, I went to the extreme. I think in this photo, we don't need the contrast because these are very smooth surfaces. So I don't think we need to apply that. So anyway, I'm gonna keep moving this mask around until I feel like the detail has been preserved, even with the noise. And then I'm going to turn this eyeball before and after. Whoa, what a difference, right? Before and after. So when I do this, I go, okay, I love how much less noise I have, but is this photo looking unreal now? Like, it's so easy to go over with these numbers, and it's so easy to go, oh, I have no noise, but what happened to your actual photo? Did you lose the feeling of photo? Does it look like it's, some weird fake thing? So start moving around on the rest. And here we had some ripples and some stuff going on, and turn the eyeball on and off by holding it down. And so this was the before. Okay, so before and after. And I'm looking at these little rocks and stuff, and I'm thinking it got way too smooth. I don't like all the extra noise that I had, but I don't like this feeling that's completely smooth, because that's not realistic either. Granted, I'm above 200%. So maybe I need to back off a little bit on noise now that I'm preserving detail, and start, I like there. I'm beginning to see a little bit of texture again on stuff without seeing spots. So that looks, the rock is looking a little bit better. So you start backing off. When smoothing looks really smooth, it might be too much. Start backing off a little bit, preserve your detail, and start seeing if you can back off on noise and get back to having something that has more rock texture without having tons of spots on the smooth areas. You see it a lot in the shadow areas where you see the noise. You wouldn't see it in the snow or in the highlights of this, but you'll see it in the shadow areas, not in the black either. It's harder to see, but in the mid shadow areas is where you see the noise. In this case, the water works well. So I'm finding that by preserving detail, I can come back on noise reduction, and I'm liking better what's happening. The rock is beginning to look more like rock again. Now I click this on from very noisy to off, and I'm liking it better. Let's see if I can reduce even more noise. Yeah, I'm liking this. See how much I can reduce by having protected the detail? I can really bring this back down, and I'm beginning to have speckled water there again. So I think I went too far. So anyway, somewhere in between there seems to be the happy spot for this one. Any questions? Anybody who wants to ask me how the thought process went? Go down and look at this area that's really textured, and I'm gonna turn that off. The before and after. I lost the noise, but I see every bit of rock texture that I couldn't see before, and that was all saved by the detail, which the noise reduction on their own wouldn't have shown me the detail. It would have just shown me noise reduction, and that's why we wanted that little slider there. Any question there, you guys? Nope. All right. So what's that?
I have a question. While I was looking away, I looked back at my computer and there was a bunch of little blue dots in the water.
Is it possible that you have this shadow clipping warnings turned on, and then suddenly you got, because of the change in your information, blue dots as in like?
That's it.
Yeah. So remember what I said, these two, when they're turned on, I'm going to change the exposure in a big way. Nope, the other way around. There. See these little, and I know that this is extreme, I'm just forcing it, but these little blue dots, when you see these fake blue dots, I'm going to Control C to not lose my correct exposure. That means that when you did your changes, you suddenly got a little bit of clipping. Okay, so it's beginning to give you that warning. that you clipped your shadows. Okay. So in that sense, it's good to have these turned on now that I think about it, because without you moving these sliders, when you're on something totally different, like we're in detail right now, and suddenly if moving these things, which it can, moves your stuff was so to the edge, then you might suddenly see some blue stuff. Now there's another blue that's why I wanted to know if that's what you were talking about. There's another kind of blue that could be happening right now that I'm going to begin to talk about, which is the color noise. So that's why I didn't know if you meant blue dots or blue areas, because I am now, if there's no other questions about noise reduction, I'm going to move into the color noise reduction question. Let me reduce the triangle for color for noise reduction. And I'm going to show you noise reduction here. I don't know if you can see on my screen. Let me see if I go bigger. You can see it. And I don't know if that shows through Zoom or not. But if you look at my water right now, can you see that there's magenta patches and blue patches and green patches? Do you guys see that? Part of that is the color, the tint and all stuff, but part of that is also noise. Oh, by the way, look, see these little red dots here? Those little red dots are me is the warning sign telling me that I'm clipping my whites a little bit. It's so tiny, I'm gonna let that go for now. I'm gonna let those whites stay clipped. If I see the whole image later, I'll see if I have more, I'll deal with it. But for now, I'm gonna keep going with the noise reduction. Now, look at the color noise reduction, which right now is at a default 25. I'm gonna move it all the way to the right. And if I look over here, and I moved it all the way to the right, so that will affect color. And let me move it here where I have some more colors here. So it's hard. I don't know if you'll see it on Zoom, but I'm going to move this from the very left. This is no color noise reduction. And look at every little spot. I'm at 400%. Okay, so it looks really weird, but at 0 color noise reduction, see how all those spots that are noise have different colors? Blue, they're magenta, purple, green, and blue. Mainly they're basically magenta or green, right? But the combination kind of makes it look like there's 2 or 3 different colors. So when you see those tones, there's something called color noise. It's really affecting the quality of the color. So a default, cameras don't do this well, so there's a default 25% already taken out by every photo, just because. Look at the difference that 0 to 25 already makes. And then look at the difference between 0 and 10, or 10 and 6. See how it's beginning to go away? And then you go up to 14 and it's going away. So basically by default, the computer already has given you 25. And if you think that there's still some color left, you can begin to move it more to the right. Now I'm going to go all the way, while I look at this colorful part of the photo, I'm going to go all the way to the right. And on the one hand, my water is much more neutral. On the other hand, I seem to have lost some color from my rocks. So how much of that color did I want or not want? And was it giving me texture and stuff? And how much was it just unwanted that I want to take out 100%? I'm going to go back to about 25% by clicking here. And now just look at your rocks and take again 100% off. And I'm just clicking there while I look at my rock. I kind of put my mouse there. I don't click, and I look at my rock and then I click. So I'm going to put my mouse around here. I'm going to look at my rock and then I'm going to click. That way my eyes are really seeing the change, right? Because otherwise it's hard to, you go back and forth. If you look away, look back, look away, look back, you don't see the change. So I'm thinking that I don't want to take everything off because it's losing some color nuance, but I don't want to have any other color. So let me try, I don't know, around 50. And I look at that and I begin to notice that I got color back in there. But I don't have such huge amounts of color variation in the most neutral part, which is what's going to show it the most, which is in the water. Maybe I can reduce a little bit more so it leaves the water a bit sooner. So once again, if you open up the color noise reduction, you have the same issue with detail and stuff like that. So maybe I can protect the detail so that I don't lose the detail. And then maybe reduce a little bit more the color noise reduction to get less out of it. Now, I might want to smooth it a little bit too if it's getting a bit off, and so I can like add a little bit of smoothness to the transitions when there is a transition. So a lot of this, you just have to go from 25, which is considered the basic minimum, where you can begin to see little splotches and stuff like that. Move the detail around to see what it does. I don't really like a lot of detail masked off on this one. I'm gonna keep the detail down because it was beginning to create some splotches. In this case, it's the opposite as before. And so by going to where the reduction is slow, I can see it better. Once I go high again now, yeah, it seems to be about right. 50, 22, a little bit of smoothness. You slowly get the idea. Now, I am seeing that I still see noise. So let me see if I need to bring, and I'm at 400%, right? But so I'm going to bring my noise reduction up a little bit more, see if I can reduce a bit more of the noise that I had going there. I'm going to go back to a more normal number because at 400, everything looks, it's hard to distinguish in pixels and noise. Okay, so at 200, this is looking much nicer than before. I'm going to turn that off. Yeah, so it's much nicer than before. When the noise does come up, it isn't color noise. All right, so I'm going to close the two noise reductions, then I'm left with sharpening. Here's the danger. If you want to sharpen a photo, because you feel like you've lost some of the sharpness, go to an area that has, that you know is in the sharp area, right? And pay attention to the areas that you think you might want to sharpen more. But again, keep it at 100%. I'm making it bigger so you can see the details more in the zoom, but ideally keep an eye on the parts that you consider the important sharp parts, which in a photograph of a person would always be the eyes. The eyes are crucial. Unless you've got a very strange kind of photograph where the eyes are not part of the portrait, the eyes really, really matter in a portrait for them to be focused. So here we're going to choose, I think this rocky area of the photo is the part that I want to be more in focus. And notice the first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to drag up the sharpening line all the way to the max, is that the noise comes back. Suddenly by sharpening to the extreme ends, I see a lot of noise again. Because what's happening is that the computer is hitting every little dot of every little pixel, and it's adding a little bit of contrast in between each little pixel to give you guys some contrast to sharpen the edges. So it's making a dark pixel darker, a light pixel lighter, minutely, which if you have an edge, that's great. But this is also doing it to every pixel, right? I'm going to bring that sharpening down to 0. And from seeing nothing to seeing tons of spots. And yeah, I'm seeing lots of little red spots right now. All those little red spots that weren't there, it's because I'm increasing contrast, but I'm not going to leave it this way, so it doesn't matter. So I'm going to bring that down again to 0. And now let's open this up and see what we can do about radius and detail. So let's say that I want to bring up sharpening. I don't know, let's bring it to some basic setting to start with. Like I think 40 was the basic starting, the regular basic starting point. So let's bring it back to 40. So we consider 40 a good starting point, right? These settings here are the defaults, right? For sharpening, okay? Where it starts at 40, gives you 1 point of radius, 25 of detail, and 0 masking. Let me show you a little bit of how to use these. Watch what happens when I click. Actually, let me undo that. I'm on a PC. Okay, the Option Alt. Look what happens when I click on these three while I hold the mask. So watch, I'm not going to hold down Option or Alt. First, I'm going to move the mask up or down, and we don't see much happening, right? I look at mask up or down, and all it looks like suddenly there's just less focus. That's all that it seems to be doing when I move this up or down. Now watch, if I move this slider up or down while I hold down the Alt key for the PC and the Command key for the Mac. And what I begin to get is, remember masks are black and white? I begin to get some kind of a mask where what becomes more prominent in white are the edges. See those white lines? Those are the edges of things. And as I move to the right and farther to the right, we're left with just white lines and nothing else. So what we're doing with this masking is saying, I don't want you to sharpen, I'm going to let go of everything now. I don't want you to sharpen the water, because if I sharpen the water, I just see more noise. I want you to sharpen the lines of this mountain so that my lines appear more prominent. So that the lines, by getting sharper, I see the sharpness without affecting the flat areas, right? So I click again on the Alt or Option and I grab the masking and I move to the right, and then I stop where I see more of the lines that I want sharpened, and already see how all of what should be water is black. So that's not going to get sharpened, but I still have a lot of little speckles there. So maybe I go down a bit more until I don't see the speckles in the water. So I know that the water speckles won't be sharpened, but my edges are still there. My edges of my rocks. So that means that once I'm at what, 56 right now masking, that means that hopefully the only thing that'll get masked are what's showing up is white. Does that make sense? I let go of my mouse and nothing has happened much yet. But now I've told the computer, yes, please keep sharpening the edges, but don't sharpen in these flat areas. So now if I sharpen more, the sharpening that's happening, and I'm going really, really, really intense by adding 123. See how my edges are getting all speckly and noisy, but not the water? I'm getting intense amounts of sharpening here. But notice that instead of everything being sharp, I'm going to go back. Instead of masking 54, I'm going to let go of the masking, and everything is getting speckled. But by masking to about, was it 54 that we chose? 54 or something like that. So then this is not being touched by my sharpening, but my edges are. So see the edges of the water. So since I went to such an incredible, huge amount of sharpening, you can really see. So we don't want this, by the way. I'm not saying this is good, but I'm showing you so you can really see the masking taking effect. Only things that have lines and edges are full of dots. That means I'm seeing the noise in there. I over sharpened in there, but I'm really trying to show you the effect of the masking. Well, this is not being affected at all. So now we back off again on the sharpening, and let's go to a more, let's leave it at a big number. Good, the big number, and show you again. So this is really too much sharpening, okay? Because you see speckled dots on all the edges. But let's use that to discover detail. What does detail do? If I have 0 on detail, no sharpening is happening. If I move it really high, it's like undoing the masking in a way, because now I'm getting much more spots on more than just the lines, but still nothing's happening in the middle, right? So there's some in between where I can say, well, I want a bit more detail than just the lines, right? Now you can really see what's going to be sharpened, which is the rocks. And so you basically forced a ton of sharpening at the top so that you can really see spots on the areas that are important to be sharpened, which are the details of the rocks, maybe a little bit less detail, and all the edges that you do want sharpened. And now you go, okay, so then now that I know that, how much sharpening do I want? One last thing, I didn't mention radius, but radius is crucial. Don't want to go very high on radius. I think a lot of the problems here is the radius that we have. That's a 1 pixel. So each each pixel is being sharpened 1 pixel around it. So really 9 pixels are being affected. So if I back off on that and I say maybe only do a half, 0.5 or 0.7 over there, then I'm keeping the sharpening closer to the edge. So I'm going to bring it back down to 0.5. So I'm keeping only the sharpening to the real edge. So now the dots are showing up only around the very edge. The dots are there because I forced sharpen too much. But at least I'm seeing what's going to be sharpened when I bring the sharpening down so that I don't see the noise so much. So I'm going to wiggle these a little bit more to go, maybe I need to sharpen a little bit more, 6.6 on radius. Okay, so I'm ready to bring this sharpening up at the top down, back to 0. And now I'll start adding sharpening until I see that it's enough. So now this is not sharpened because the sharpening is at 0, but these masks are in place. Now I can start sharpening a little bit and I begin to see the detail popping in without a bunch of uncomfortable dots. And then I sharpen a little bit more. And if I'm not sure how well that is working, I just look at the number 53 and I go back to nothing and I stare at my photo and I go from there, and then I put my mouse kind of around what I thought was about 53 and I stare at my detail and I click here and I go, whoa, that really made a nice difference there. Okay, so at around here I figure it'll be about 59. So again, my technique is I put my mouse where I want it to end up and I look at my rock and I turn it off and I go, oh, I see how it got softer. I'm going to go up to 400%. See if you guys see what I'm talking about. Now I have no sharpening. Now put my mouse around here, which I figured by when I paid attention before was about 50 something. And I stare at my rock. I move my eyes to stare at that patch of rock and I click with my mouse. I go, ooh, I see those edges better now. I'm looking at it 400%, so it looks bad. But if I go back to the good old 100%, which is where I should be, then now I go from 0 to around 50 something, and I can see my detail beginning to come back into the photo that I took away. Does that make sense? Many times sharpening is a subtle thing, something that no one else might even notice. That by the time you're done, you go, why did it go to all this trouble? But it's that extra bit of pop that makes this one photo look that much tighter than the one that didn't get sharpening. So now I've changed sharpening, noise reduction, and color noise reduction. I'll turn this off. And this is my before, and this is my after. And the main difference is that we managed to get rid of the noise without losing all of the texture. So it's still might be a bit smoother than you like, but we had so much noise that you need to either do that or bring back some of the noise back. It's a choice. Next, go back to. Notice that none of this would have worked had I been watching it. It didn't fit in to screen. None of this, if you turn this on or off, it fit to screen. There's a tiny bit of a difference, but not much. Okay, so it's very hard to gauge what any of these things do unless you're in 100%. All right, so I've kind of talked you through this whole thing in such a way that if you watch the video again, when you're working on other images, you can pick up again maybe on reasonings that I explained as to why one or the other might help you more or less. And again, each photo will have a different, you can just assign a just basic generic sharpening to everything like Photoshop does and kick back and never do it. Or you can focus on what you think needs more sharpening. One last thing I'm going to say about sharpening is that if you do this in RAW, you have to do it to everything. The biggest difference is that if you do this in Photoshop, where you can do a lot of sharpening, you can also mask it out and then say, okay, I'm going to sharpen the mountains more, and then I'm going to mask out all of the water. So I don't even have to worry. And I get much more sharpening on the texture and not on the water, just by using the masking system that we've learned about before. So you can add a bit more sharpening later without affecting the noise by doing that in Photoshop. Okay. How's it going? Questions? Was that too much? Or was that perfect?
Is there a reason why you would do it in RAW when, if you know, like you've taught us how to do it in Photoshop and do certain areas like you're just talking about?
Yeah, great question. Sharpening shouldn't usually be done until the end, because if you're going to be doing any other changes, you're going to end up, like, as I said, you're adding contrast, taking contrast, making spotting, healing, retouching, and you've already got all these pixels that are worked on. If you're in Photoshop, you might as well wait until the end. But in RAW, it might be that this is the end. If this photo has no other reason for it to be opened, if you're totally done with it, then you might not need to go into Photoshop. I mean, RAW is part of Photoshop, but you might not need to add anything else. You might not need to mask anything out. Maybe you do want to take these little straggly bushes out and just patch in some more snow drifts so that it all looks like snow. Maybe there's something else you want to do in Photoshop, but if you're done, then this is the last thing you do, and you do it here. You know what I mean? And when you do it here, it has really good noise reduction features versus in Photoshop, it doesn't. So, I mean, the noise reduction isn't so good inside of Photoshop. So what you might want to do if you don't do the sharpening here is at least do the noise reduction in RAW when you're going to continue in Photoshop. And then in Photoshop, you do the sharpening at the end of all of your retouching. But by then you've done all of the work without noise. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Thanks.
Deanna, I'm
Yeah.
bothered by this photo that it's too orange though.
Yeah, I know. When I did the quick changing, to redo it again, I don't like, let me
It just doesn't seem like very natural, maybe too saturated, but we're not seeing the whole scene around it. We're seeing what we're seeing.
Yeah.
And but the impression is that this is just trying to get white is forcing everything to orange.
Well, here's the reality. When you're trying to get white for this, and I just managed to move my mouse. I went back to the white balance, by the way, and I'm clicking around in different parts of the white, because remember, we don't have a neutral gray card here. And as you click around, you might find a spot that's better. And I just found a spot that I like a bit better than where we were before. And or you can just pull back on the yellow. You and yourself bring some of that orangey stuff out of it. It immediately starts going a little bit blue. And the thing here is that you need to reach a spot where you feel comfortable with it, because remember that this is snow at Arches National Park, where all the dirt is red and it is sunset time of day. So it would make no sense to have neutral snow. You know what I mean? So even if you don't know that it's sunset, I mean, the color there kind of gives you an idea that it's sunset, but the color of the dirt also gives you an idea of where you are. If you don't know any of that, you can fake this to look like it's regular brown dirt and it's a regular other time of day by changing the color. But you are, but you need to take into account where you are. Now, that also shows you the limitations of Camera Raw, in the sense that it is a global procedure. By the way, you can do spot modifications on Camera Raw. I haven't showed you yet. Adjustments of areas. So I could grab this whole area and make it lighter, and this whole area make it lighter. What's harder is just to work with, say, the snow, because it's patched all over the place, right? In RAW, that's hard. But to Bonnie's question, if you still feel like you want to change, you like most of it, but you're still not happy with the fact that, the snow is still too yellow, or it's not white enough, or whatever it is that you want to work on. So say I want to make the snow whiter, but I'm getting these areas that are now popping out, because that's kind of something I would like to do, then I really can't do that. I'm limited here in the fact that it's a global modification. Other than doing spot adjustments, I'm not going to teach you right now with a brush, but I'm gonna move on into saying that that's why we have Photoshop. You, at this point, you say, okay, I've gone as far as I can go with raw. And again, you could still do spot adjustments, but I need us to move from raw into Photoshop, right? So I'm going to say this is as far as I can go in raw. And now in Photoshop, I can go in and just really isolate the snow and make it more neutral, because I can do masking in Photoshop in a way that I can't do it in raw. Does that make sense? That's the beauty of Photoshop. You get pure control over every pixel in this photo and change every pixel into whatever you want inside of Photoshop versus in raw.
I have one more question though.
Mhm.
In camera, at the moment of the shot, if you're looking at the histogram, maybe,
Mhm.
Would you have been able to adjust the exposure in any way in camera
Mhm.
and do something in camera that we can't achieve in camera raw?
Yeah. And I don't have it in front of me, do I? No, because actually my son was using it yesterday, but let me see if I have a sample one.
Was this photo by any chance taken on auto?
I do not know. I don't think so. My son took it, but he doesn't shoot in auto, but we can go check. So let's do this to her question. Everyone, let's say done to this because I want to show you. Go back to Bridge. When you click in Bridge, you see here the choices that were done in shooting. So
it was an auto.
When you look over here, where does it say auto? Oh, exposure
Right
mode
there.
auto. There it is. See?
Yeah.
But there you go. I said he doesn't shoot an auto, but I guess he did shoot an auto.
Well,
So
he
there
had,
you go.
he had to quick catch the light, which is understandable.
Yeah. So you do what you can.
So the camera didn't really understand, and that's where.
Well, I was going to say, snow is very hard for the cameras to understand. And if you have an automatic camera, the kind that you can say, oh, I'm shooting snow, you're telling the camera, you put it in a preset for snow, and it knows that all that white stuff is supposed to be neutral. Otherwise, snow also always shows up reflecting the sky. And so you're never going to get a purely neutral thing. Let me, 1 second, I'm going to go grab something that I want to show you. So give me 1 second here. I'll be back in a sec. Okay, I'm back. So I'm going to stop my share to see if I can show you in my little photo of me now. I happened to give this to my son yesterday. This is and this is not part of Photoshop, but this is in order to not have to do so much work in Photoshop. If you're really serious about your photography, you would carry around, and this one is tiny, but you would carry around a little color checker, right?
Oh.
So what this is, and this is a little mini color checker that comes in for like pocket. There's big ones, like, big, like an 8.5 by 11 sheet that you can have. But what this is a couple of, and it's like a little booklet where you can have a bit of what's considered white, and then what's considered a set of colors that, let me put it next to my face because that's when it seems to work best.
The blur is interfering.
Okay, so now you take the first photograph with this in front, you have someone stand in front of it, or you prop it against a rock or something, and you shoot this in there. And then you take it out and you shoot again, right? So then what you do is you open both here in RAW or in Photoshop, and you put your eyedropper onto what's neutral gray, which is right there. And you're camera and your computer corrects to making that spot neutral. And then everything drops into neutral. And then you change those settings onto the one that doesn't have this little guy in.
How does your camera do that? I mean, you're just taking a picture of it. Is that, I don't know.
No, the camera doesn't do it.
Oh,
You put this and
Yeah.
take a picture, chink,
Mhm.
right? And then you move it out of the way and take the same picture, chink. So you have two pictures. The camera shoots the same settings both, especially if you're not in auto. So you're sure that the settings are identical both times. And that's it. And you're done. When you come in to post process, you open both up. And instead of having to guess what part of the photo has a neutral setting, you have a little block of gray, middle gray. And you guys can print middle gray out of on a piece of paper. You can fill a screen, you can make a middle gray square and print it out of on your printer and put it in front of a photo, click and then take it out and click. You don't have to have a fancy little color checker. And it's better than nothing when you then go and have two photos next to each other. One will have a big chunk in the middle with these colors that you can use for your eyedropper. And then those color corrections then apply to the photo without that thing. And if you look at model photography and stuff like that, when they're being done, there's always a color checker in the place because you want to get skin tones and stuff like that correct. And so people who are serious about their photography and have time to set it up and stuff like that, they will, if you're doing product photography stuff, set one of these, shoot it once, move it out of the way, and with the same lightings, now you shoot all your products and then you get the color correction right for all of them, So anyway, that goes more into photography. I don't get much
Well,
of a
it
chance to
goes-
teach you about photography,
it
but
goes along with a question I had in my mind is what if we were able to have a grayscale that we referred to and use the eyedropper on right there with our photo but it has to have the same lighting source. So I guess what you just said is you have to take the color picture and then you take the scene or the color checker and then you use that color checker image to use for the grayscale for that picture only, not for every other picture you take. Is that correct?
yeah, it only works for that lighting.
Okay.
So if you then turn around exactly in the other end of you're taking this photograph, right? So I'm not showing. So say you're taking this picture. You're standing here and you take this picture and you turn 180 degrees and you take a picture of everything that's behind you. Well, the light will be 100% different because everything is shining in a different way if you just turn your body. So then you need to put the color checker ahead because now the sun might be hitting. Like right now it's not hitting the rocks, but you're in another one, the sun is, you got to put the color checker again and then take it out and shoot again. Now, when you are doing this because your landscape photography is sitting there for hours waiting for the perfect light, you do that. But when you're just a regular person walking around and you go, whoa, look at that cool color in the puddle, you just do your best, you shoot, it's low light, you move on, you get home and you go, okay, now what do I do? Right? And you don't have that color checker. So then you're left with just trying to kind of figure it out.
Yeah.
So if you do carry around one of these, even if, as I said, a folded sheet of paper tuck in the back of your pocket that you can use as your sample, it helps. And so maybe during the day, remember to shoot in, 4 different areas. It's not so much what you're shooting at, but how the lighting has changed to that thing that you're shooting at. So as we get into the sunset hours, the lighting changes color by the minute, right? And so, and also not to be so crazy about the fact that many times there's not so much correct as mood, right? What you want to get, you can turn this photo into looking like it was shot at almost nighttime, and that could be a moon glare, right? With RAW, you could do anything you want, right? So now let me actually, I wasn't going to show you that, but that's a cool thing. It's 3:02. I wanted to go into the other photo, but let's open this one again. If you did close it, because I want to show you, first of all, that all those settings are there. It's completely non-destructive because you open it up where you were and you keep working with it, right? But once you're somewhere that you like, you can also take a snapshot of this. Okay, so watch. Here on the far right, there's all these little tools. And this one down there is a snapshot. Okay, let me put on my spotlight again. Such a bad tool, this spotlight, but it's the best we can do to get you to have my mouse have something better to see. So over here, my mouse, I'm moving it to the far right, way over here. That here is a snapshot. I'm going to click on that. And it brings in something called snapshots. Okay, so I'm going to take a snapshot of this. So I'm going to click on this little guy and one time snapshot. And I'm going to call this one first. Let me call this one sunset arches snow number 1, for example. Right? So I have an idea of the time of day, the kind of the dirt around it, and the fact that snow is the issue. So I have an idea of what the issues are with this one, and I call it number 1. And I say, okay. So there you go. I've created the first one. Did everyone create that one?
Mhm.
Right. So we're done for now. Let's go back to this here, which is the basic settings that we were at before. So of all these buttons, click on that one, and that takes us back here. Now, purposely, let's mess this up. Let's try to make this look like a completely different time of day, or maybe black and white, or maybe neutral but blue. So I'm going to actually make this look maybe, yeah, I'm careful, because as soon as you start making these changes, you start getting into different exposure things. But I'm going to make this look completely different. I'm going to make it look almost nighttime or something. I don't know if we can do this, but it's hard. I don't know. I'm going to make, I don't have the time left to do a really good second exposure, but let's imagine increasing your blacks. So I'm giving a completely different exposure. Now you've gotten so accustomed to this light. So that there, which is much darker, someone mentioned they like the darker one. This kind of looks like it's deeper into the sunset hours. Hopefully we make it, the snow can't be neutral because it is reflecting a bit more of the night skies. So we make it a little bit bluer. Maybe we pull back on the saturation a little bit. So anyway, this is a completely different, exposure. For some photos, it looks better to change it than others, but say that we decide that this is a good exposure. And remember, we can always isolate parts of this in Photoshop and give it a better, so I'm gonna back off on the whites here a little bit. So anyway, so here we have, and it's pretty well distributed on the histogram and everything. It's just the whole thing has toned down quite a bit. I'm gonna reduce the contrast because it's more the end of the night. So this is gonna look more like it's a sunset light. Actually, saturation up to get that color. So now it's a photo that's more about the color in the middle. Might give it another crop, whatever. All right, say that I like it. Everyone made some other changes to theirs. Let's go back to snapshots. I'm going to take another snapshot of this. I'm going to call this one sunset dark snow, or something like that, number 2. So actually this was arches snow number 2, but maybe I'll call this one dark, like I want to make it look as if it's dark or something. And I'll say okay to that, right? So now I can go and say, well, that's one exposure and that's another one. I actually kind of look at this one and go, I like that one, or I like this one, right?
Cool.
And you keep both. Now this isn't only set up for this photo only. You make 2 or 3. Many times you can have 2 or 3 versions of a photo that's very high key or very, you know, you can do 5 or 6 different exposures of something. To make last class, we did this sunset on a beach and we made it like, oh, the colors were gorgeous towards the orange. Some other made, oh, gorgeous colors towards the magentas, right? So you make it 2 different exposures. You don't know what was really in the sky that day. You just make it look whatever way you want. And then you have 2 versions of this photo, or 4 or 5. But the point I'm trying to make is, let's go ahead and say done right now. And now you've got the second. So now if I go back to Bridge, this is the choice that's being shown. Okay. Let's now open a different photo. You can't open a PSD, and I'm noticing here I only have PSDs because they're all ending files. So I'm going to have to go back. I'm going to go back to Google Drive. Everyone who's on BDI, go back to BDI. Otherwise, you guys open anything else, go to shared drives. In fact, you know what? Let's go to the next photo that I want us to work on. No, what is it? Photoshop. No. Photoshop class file spring. I have to go navigate all back in there. Let's go to, no, let's not open the next one. Let's open anything. Let's go back to where this one was, which this is still my original one. And I'm going to open up here, the filter dehaze, whatever. So I'm going to right click on this one and open it in Camera Raw. And it's okay if you didn't follow me, but open any JPEG and right click and say open in Camera Raw. There's a point to why I'm saying I don't care which one you open, because the whole point is that no matter how much work you can do in this, here, this is one where dehaze does amazing jobs. Look at dehaze and how much color it brings out. Anyway.
Oh, wow.
I know, it's pretty cool. But anyway, let me just show you. I can go to snapshots. Oh, did this change from last? Interesting. The snapshots. Okay, it used to be that your snapshots would be here, keeping you the preserved settings of your other photos. I guess now you need to save them as a preserved setting. Interesting. If I, okay, so I wanted to show you something that I can't show you. That's bizarre. You used to be able to, I guess you have to set it as a create preset, which I guess makes sense. All right, so all I can do is apply previous settings. So it's applying the settings of the last time I did this. So these are those settings, right? But this isn't, I wanted to show you that you would still see in the past, in the new old version of Photoshop of Raw that it just changed, you would see the snapshots of snow setting, so you could keep using them as presets. This time it saves them as snapshots and you have to set them as presets. So, okay, so that won't work, but okay. So back to anyway, that doesn't work. But by the way, I did want to say that this one is an example of where texture and clarity and stuff like that work really well if you want to play with it yourself. But I just showed you already what, look at dehaze and all the colors that it brings out when you just by working on dehaze, suddenly these mountains, this is Death Valley, have so much color and so much stuff. You add some vibrance and suddenly look at this photo, and 2 things. All I did is vibrance and saturation, and this is the before. No, that was not before. After that was the other settings, from there to there, just with these 2 settings, right? How intense. So every time you open a photo in here, you got to explore different things, because as much as I told you in the other one, don't use texture, clarity, and dehaze, this one, I'm like, oh, wow, look immediately, because I've tested on this one before. This looks so good immediately. This is probably a long shot. This is probably a telezoom onto a far off piece, not too far, but far enough that you got a lot of, you know, hot air, desert air in the middle. Anyway, so I'm looking at the time. I'm going to cancel without accepting any changes on this one. And I want us to open because I want to show you something different. And go to the Santi Head Shop. And if some of you guys don't have the Santi Head Shop, open some other photo, like maybe the one you just did. If you can have this one, that's best so that we can follow through with the same stuff. But I'm going to show you how to use Camera Raw inside of Photoshop now and not before Photoshop. Oh, I did forget one more thing. How do you go into Photoshop with the photo that we just worked on? One last thing. For those of you going back and forth on VDI, I forgot to do this here, where instead of going to this PC and clicking all this stuff, and this is for you guys at home too, you can drag here some things to make it quick. So here's Photoshop class files, Photoshop shared drive. I'm going to grab this here and not here. I'm going to back up. I'm going to go in here to where it says Photoshop shared drive. I'm going to grab this folder and put it here. So now I can jump to it when I want to. And then I'm going to go to this PC for actually getting the Google Drive, My Drive. And here's the Spring 2 folder. And this one here is in My Drive. I didn't want to do this too much because it confuses people, but now I can jump from the class files in the shared drive to the work in My Drive, right? I've gone from 2 different drives, so it's much easier to go back and forth from different places. So if you know what I'm talking about and you're comfortable with file management, this really helps your life. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then this will be, you'll still don't know where your files are, but at least you can get to them quickly. So anyway, I'm going to go back now using this to my one. Let's open again the reflection sunset arches, because what if from here you want to continue into Photoshop? So I've shown you how to not continue into Photoshop, right? But if you do want to continue into Photoshop because now you want to do some other work or masking or whatever, then instead of done, what you do is you say open. And there's 2 ways to say open. There's open, and then there's that little arrow on the right of open. There's open, and then there's an arrow. If you open, you just open this as a flat file in Photoshop. Okay? If you just say open. If you look at the directions there, is if you alt click, you open it, but without all of the work that you've just done, you open it as it was when it came in flat with all the changes. Most of the times you wouldn't want to do that, right? Or if you shift click to open it, opens up as a smart object. Another way is to click on this little arrow, and then you can just say open up as a smart object or open up as a copy. So you can leave this one as is and open a different one. So there's different ways to open, but all of this under open opens up in Photoshop. No matter what, this is to go open in Photoshop. Okay, all of these choices are to open in Photoshop. Now, what I want us to do is for you guys to go into here and open as object. This means smart object. That way I can teach you a little bit. Looking at the time, and I'm not sure how much time I'll have to open the other one up. So I'm going to first of all open up a smart object. Otherwise, I'll finish the smart object part next week. Click on that. And this will open in Photoshop. And wait until it opens. And it'll take a little bit of time. I ended up opening the version that's blue-ish. All right, and there it is. So now, I'm going to close on this. What I have is a photo that I've worked in RAW already. And when it opens up in Photoshop, this is it. This is the starting point of it. Even though the original starting point of it was somewhere else, this is the starting point. It's my blue version of the starting point, but this is the starting point. So you guys might have opened the first version that you did, whichever one you did, but this is your flat starting point. You can't back off in here and make it yellow again. You would just change, these pixels are, if you want, have been destructively modified. Does that make sense? You can save them completely. If you open it up again in RAW, you can modify it again and then open it again in Photoshop. But this flat file that's come open in Photoshop has had its pixels changed. This way, these blue pixels are now blue, and this is red, and the sharpening has already happened, and I'm starting at this point as my starting point. So if I go ahead and do Command 1, so that I can see that 100%, all the sharpening that I've applied is already applied, all the noise is gone, all the stuff, all the work that I did. See how nice and smooth this is in Photoshop? I'm not seeing any noise, all the noise I had at the beginning of the other one. This is my edited file, okay? But at this point, anything else I do to it, I can do it either in a destructive mode or not. But this is it. This is the beginning one. If I want to go backwards, I either have to go back and redo that and open another one and start with it, or I can only move forwards with this one, not go back to where I started. Here's why, instead of continuing with this, with the smart object part of it, which I will teach smart object for sure next week. I want to give you an example of when you would want to open up in both Photoshop and in Bridge. So I'm going back to Bridge. It's taking, wow, my computer is really slow. I'm trying to go back to Bridge. There we go. I'm going to show you why you would go between Photoshop and Bridge. So I'm going to go back to the class files again. So the ones that are in the shared drive. And I'm going to go open Santi's headshot. Now, this is a layered file already. Okay. And I do not want to put it through RAW first, just because maybe I forgot. Maybe I didn't think of it. Maybe by the way, it's already a PSD, so you can't open a PSD in RAW. But say maybe it was a JPEG and I first opened it in Photoshop. For whatever reason, when you double click, it's going to open first in Photoshop. Many times you don't think of going through RAW first, although technically it is the best idea at this point to take the lighting and that kind of stuff and deal with that first. Let's say that we opened it in Photoshop. So is everyone here? Do y'all have it in Photoshop now?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So this is a prime example of, first, you might want to do some of your editing for retouching and stuff. Because I don't have that much time, I'm looking at the time, 20 minutes. Let's not spend too much time on the retouching. I'm going to do Command, or no, sorry, I'm going to PC Command Control 1, Command or Control 1 to go to 100%, because, and yes, this is the guy who took that photo. This here is a perfect example of where we can do retouching, but I'm going to show you. Is it too much to show you in 20 minutes?
Mm-mm.
I wanted to show you how to do retouching and RAW. I'll show you how to do it. If it becomes too confusing, I'll open up with this next week. And if not, maybe we can finish it up this week. So here's the thing. If I do straight retouching with a spot brush here, we already know it's so easy. I can go in and get rid of all of these things in his, in his forehead. And what's happening? What am I doing right now to this photograph?
Destructively.
Yeah, I am destructively modifying it, which is fine if I know what I'm doing. But what if I mess him up? because I'm doing on the pixels, okay? So I highly recommend, you know, a little spot here and there, go ahead and do it destructive. But if you've already followed through with me, clean back to the original. And let's do some basic editing, and you guys can get it better with time as homework maybe, but let's do a little bit of basic editing, but we're going to do it non-destructively. So head down, create a new layer. Then go grab the spot healing tool. Okay, the spot healing brush. Make sure you're sampling all layers. This is where people kind of forget. If you sample all layers, then this will fix the zits from down there. So now, and again, as I said, we're going to do this in a bit of an abrupt method because I want to show you something else, not so much this, which we've spent some time retouching already, but this is a great example of the spot retouching tool. So go ahead and maybe clear some of the worst spots on his forehead just to say that we've done it. Couple of these. I have a very feathered brush, so I'm having to make it bigger, which is not good to have such a feathered brush, but anyway, just trying to do this very quickly. So with much more detail and concern, we can, poor guy, he's got the brains of his mom and the artistic flair, but I never had zits, and I'm not the kind of mom who knew what to tell him what to do with them because they just didn't happen on me nor on my husband. I don't know where he got them from. Anyway, so Photoshop, yay, because I never knew how to tell him to use whatever products he was supposed to use. We always have Photoshop. So here we go. I did a very quick fixing of his zits, but quick or not, look at what a difference. I turned this eyeball on or off just in 2 seconds of the spot healing tool. That really made a difference, right? So
Yes.
can Bonnie, can you mute yourself? I know
Oh,
there's,
sorry.
it's okay. All right. So did everyone do a little bit of a thing here? One thing I haven't showed you before, when you want this layer to apply only to this layer and nothing else, there is nothing else this could apply to right now, but sometimes there's other things that could apply to. You could also clip this layer onto that one so that it always applies to that. And one way to do that is to hold your mouse right in between both of them, right? Put your mouse right in between both of these, hold down your Option or Alt key, and it turns into this little shape, and then click. And then that clips this layer onto that one. So it can affect only this one, which is a moot point over here. But many times when you have many layers, that is not a moot point, and it really matters to make sure that this kind of thing only affects this one and nothing else. So here I'm going to call this one Spot Healing the Blemishes. I'm not going to call them sits. Okay, Spot Healing the Blemishes. All right, especially because we have so many people on VDI, let's do a quick save as and put this one in your own drive. Save on your computer, Google Drive, My Drive, Photoshop class, Spring 2. And I'm going to call this one now not original, but edited. Edited. Okay, so there's much more that can be done to this photo on details and stuff like that. But now let's do a good old Command or Control 0 and look at the coloring, the lighting. What do you guys think about it? Coloring, lighting wise?
It's a little dark for a portrait.
It's a little bit dark. Is there any color cast to it? I'm seeing some blue. Look at the edges of his hair. It's even got some green, which of course is reflecting the transparency against the bushes, right? But there's a little bit of blue even in this light that's coming in. There's a little, this is supposed to be black. See how it's a little bit bluish, greenish. Anyway, so there's some color cast. His face is a little bit red, but mainly it's dark. So all of these things are things that you could fix in Photoshop. Adjustment layers, one by one, you could be fixing all of those things, adjustment layers and mask adjustment layer. You can end up with, like, 5 or 6 different adjustment layers and masks and do a beautiful job of this. Or you can use one tool. You can use just Photoshop, Camera Raw, but you're already in Photoshop, right? And if you want to apply and just, I'm just going to show this to you for a second. Don't do this. Please don't do this because we don't have the time to do an undo. If I go, it's a filter, to filter Camera Raw filter. I selected the background. I do Camera Raw filter. I'm going to change something very, very obvious, like something that looks really bad, but it's a huge change, right? So I'll say okay to that. 2 things I'll show you that are really bad with that. One thing that's really bad is that it happened onto my pixels. Destructive. And the second thing is that it didn't happen to my spot healing or blemishes. You see that? Because I applied it just to the images, and this little floating thing was left looking like scarily brown spots, because the filter was applied only to that layer instead of to both. Does that make sense? That's why I wanted us to do some spot healing, and I didn't care how good the spot healing was, because I wanted to show you how these filters apply to one layer. So the goal is how to apply this filter to both of them at the same time and in a non-destructive way. So I'm going to Control Z and Command Z to get rid of that. Okay. Even had I done it the correct way, had I done this the correct way, which is to protect it as a smart object, and done it the correct way, I would have still left out that file. So the goal is to do both of these files as one layer that I can then do the Camera Raw onto. So this is new for just about everyone. Okay, so pay attention. I select both. Select one. By the way, it's easier to click on the background lock and disconnect, that way that both are layers. So all I did was click on that little lock, select one, click Shift and select the other one. We're going to be talking about more in depth about smart objects next week. But this is what we're going to do, is we're going to turn the 2 layers into one smart object. Now that they're selected that way, you can either right click on one of them and convert to smart object, or for those of you who don't like right clicks, you can go up to, I believe it's under layer, smart objects, convert to smart objects. Whole point is we're going to convert it into a smart object, and it's going to look as if it's one file now. Yeah. It looks like it's one file. For you guys to be clear, this can be opened up again and see those 2 layers by simply double clicking. So look up here. We've done this. I've shown you a little bit of a smart object before. See how I have reflection, arches is open, and Santi Head Shop is open. If I double click this thumbnail where I have this little boxy thing right near to show you that it's a smart object, I double click it, say okay to that. A new file kind of open up. And that new file that opened up is just my 2 little layers that I was just working on. It's like a file inside of my, creating the smart object is like I've created a little file inside of my layers. And now I can do whatever I want to do with this, give it, spot it some more, change some more. You see what I mean? Anyway, I just wanted to show you that it's there. We're not going to edit him a little bit more. I'm going to close this little new file that just opened up. And I'm back in here where this is one file. I'm showing you that because if you try to spot this guy now, you can't. See how it's got this little old no, and when I click, it tells me, ooh, now you can't spot something that's a smart object. So you say cancel, you go, oh shoot, I can't spot this guy anymore. I can't fix what I didn't fix. Yes, you can. You just need to open it up inside of its own little file, keep working on it, and then save and come back to here and it'll be applied. Does that make sense? Because once there is smart object, that file is protected from editing the pixels. Okay, so now in here, in Photoshop, without having gone to Google, having turned that into a smart object, now everyone do this with me. Make sure it's a smart object. You need to have converted it. Now we go to filter, camera raw filter. And now this camera raw that we're doing is inside of Photoshop. And it's applying it to just this. So if I have the other layers and stuff, it's going to apply only to this one object. And it's probably taxing the system a lot to have all this stuff open. It's sitting there. And if it opened for you guys, it's not opening for me yet. Hello.
It froze my computer up completely.
It froze you. It froze me too. I think
I
we're
lost
all-
everything, Zoom, everything.
Yeah, we're taxing our system. Anyway, for those of you who managed to get it open, does anyone have the camera raw controls available? It's working for some of you guys. So make them look better. You can. There's a lot more we can do with color and lighting and editing. Use your camera stuff while I wait to see what's happening because I'm frozen. Let me see if I hit escape. For those of us, is it VDI who froze? Who else is frozen like me? Lynn, you said you were frozen?
Oh, everything froze. I mean,
Everything
my
dropped.
computer's overloaded.
But
I
you're
can't-
not on VDI though.
No, I
Yeah.
don't know what happened.
Yeah,
Everything
remember
just-
when you're doing Photoshop, it really taxes your system. When you're doing
Yeah.
Photoshop, close your browsers, turn off Excel, turn off all the other stuff, you know, it's just not. Jacob, you have camera raw, whoever is able to do it. If you want to, maybe I'll stop sharing my screen because that's going to help me maybe resolve mine because sharing. Does anyone else who have camera raw open want to share their screen and show us a little bit of their editing while I try to get me unfrozen? Well, this is where I was heading to though. I just wanted to show you how you can open this inside of Photoshop. I have to close Photoshop, I think. Oh, I'm completely frozen. Not my computer, but my VDI is absolutely stopped responding. So I'm going to close my VDI and start again. But if anyone else wants to, while I'm trying to get me back online to share my screen, does anyone else want to share their screen?
Sure.
Thank you, Ryan. Okay, so Ryan now has Santi open and I think you've already done some white balance there.
Yeah, I did a couple things.
Yeah, I think it's too yellow, but
Yeah.
then again, it's camera raw and sharing and all stuff. Try with the eyedropper, since you do have you don't have a neutral gray here, but his eyeglasses are kind of gray, and maybe you
Yeah.
have a darkish black, not his eyes, but the frames of eyeglasses.
The frames, yeah.
They're dark gray, but they're kind of gray. And then then you click on the black, try a few until you see, whoa, that makes it very green. Try a couple of different things until you find a spot that gets you near enough, which that one seems near enough. And then you can jiggle around the stuff or try white balance auto, which maybe we just, try a couple of different ones. Oh, by the way, stop, show that. See, click on that. See what I meant? How when it's not a raw, you don't have all those presets.
Yeah.
Okay, so when it's not a raw, that's the main difference. And the biggest difference, of course, is that your photograph, keep working, by the way, just want to show that. When it's not a raw photo, your photograph has less material to work with, and thus the end product might not give you such a good, will not give you such a good result as if you start raw on a JPEG, if you start raw on a raw, it's like you've got the best ingredients. And I always think, and people who talk about, making a salad with homegrown vegetables or, organic farmers market, yada, yada, or just going and grabbing a pre-made salad at, at the store, and it's the ingredients that you're working with are different. But in the end, both can be yummy salads, right? It just depends on, you can just probably get equal to equal a better result with the better ingredients, right? So consider that that's what I'm not able to, I'm stuck. My computer's, I'm going to have to reset. My computer's not opening VDI again. It's completely stuck in there. I might have to finish today, which is only a few minutes away, with just you sharing. So anyway, you've done some changes, by the way. Let me just say there's a lot you can do here. We can keep playing with it, but I want to show you what happens. Say that you're done. Say that you've done all your changes and say okay to that. See how, wait, don't say okay. See down here, it's okay. I said say okay, and then I said, see how the choices are different? It didn't say open or done or all that. All it said was okay or cancel. If you say cancel, it's like you didn't apply the filter. If you say okay, right there, can you point to what happened on your layers? You got your smart filter, which is the mask, that white mask. We showed you the mask last week. And then right underneath you have camera raw. Okay, so you can turn this on and off. You can decide that that's how it was before, and that's when you turn it. It's actually faster to turn the eyeball off the smart filter. It doesn't recalculate it. That's just an on and off. See, that's where he started. That's where he's now with this photo. Okay, now you want to keep working on it. You have two things you can keep working on. Stop. Sure. Camera raw. If you double click, you keep working on it. Or spotting out some other stuff, then you have to double click on the thumbnail, and that would take you into the smart object. So you can keep editing this in both directions. So now go back to camera raw and double click on camera raw. And it opens back into camera raw. And you can keep jiggling, changing, add some vibrance, go down to the color. It's kind of dead in color. Move a little bit of vibrance in there. It'll get a green. That green will pop out. His face is a little bit more color, not to the point that it's fake, etc. So you play around with the settings. I was going to show you a few little targeted adjustments on this one. We can work with it a little bit more. And when we're done, then you say okay again, and so on and so forth. Okay. And so all of the changes that we did here are completely 100% non-destructive. And when you save this file, it would save again as a layered file, and you can work on it for years to come. Next time he sees this photo, he goes, Mom, my hair doesn't look like that anymore. Well, we can try to give it a haircut with Photoshop, which we can.
I like him that way.
Anyway,
he's unique.
He is very unique, and he plays it off. Because, by the way, you guys can't tell, but on the back his hair is just regular curly, and on the front he has this mop of afro, and he just kind of builds it up and makes this big topping, and it's so funny. Anyway, hey, kids, he's definitely unique. All right, so that's what I wanted to show you. Photoshop, how to use raw inside of Photoshop. It's part of Photoshop. We never went in. If you go back and open this file from Bridge, it's just a layered file. you don't see all of the, so go ahead and say, save and show us bridge again. And you'll see that you don't see all those
Oh, yeah,
settings.
I already saved it. Oop,
Okay, so now
Yeah.
go to bridge. And where you see this photo, see how you don't see those little markings on the right of it that say that it's been edited in RAW? Because it's not. This is a layered file. There happens to be a RAW filter inside of it. Versus on the left, you have the ones that have been edited just in RAW without opening up into Photoshop. Okay, now, can you go back to Photoshop? Because last thing before I know it's
I
time.
accidentally
3
clicked.
minutes. So in Photoshop here, you do have both Santi edited and you have the other one open, the reflection after effects. See,
Mhm.
go to the reflection after effects. Up.
Sorry, it's hard to see.
Okay,
Oh, yeah, sorry.
yeah, there we go. So thank you so much, Ryan, for showing being so generous to show us your screen when mine gave up the ghost. So here you have the one that was worked inside of RAW, and then we opened in Photoshop. Okay, so this that he opened in Photoshop
Mhm.
right now isn't a file yet, doesn't exist as a file. It needs to be saved to begin to work on it. Maybe you want to work on it because you want to put a little, fishy swimming in there, or maybe you just want to keep working with those colors and now edit the snow more. Bonnie was mentioning how it's still too yellow, or make the reflection blue, or whatever you want to do. Or if you want to work on sharpening and stuff. So now you have to save this file. So when you go say file save, even if you do a save, it won't know what to save it at. So it's going to basically bring a save as,
Right.
because it's not a file yet, right? So you need to save it into your My Drive, which you are. And then this one, save it as, yeah. And so this is a file that's a PSD file. So from now on, see how now he changed it up there. Now the name, can you point towards your name? Now it says PSD. He saved it as a layered file. He could have saved it as a flat file, as a JPEG, but he would have compressed it. And the whole point is we did all this work. We don't want to compress it. We want to leave it as a layered file to keep working on it, do whatever. Maybe this is going to be the background, and then this is going to bleed into, maybe you're going to add the mountain cliff there that's being reflected. The photo that you took of that cliff that's full of sun, maybe you're going to put that on top, right? You're going to edit 2 photos and make one long photo with the cliff right there that's being reflected. Who knows what you're going to do with this? You do that as a layered file. You leave it uncompressed, okay? And then when you're completely done and you're ready to print or ready to put on the web, that's when you create a save as a JPEG out of it. But this one stays as a layered file straight out from your RAW, as best as you got your RAW ready to work in Photoshop. Okay, so you end up basically with 3 files. You end up with go back to Bridge. 2 files, really. You have 3 because you made a copy, but you end up with 1, which is your RAW that you can keep changing forever. And then 1, which is your PSD, which now is fixed in time, and you can only keep changing it inside of Photoshop. But if you want a different version, like you go back into your RAW and you get your second snapshot, your dark one, and you point out another PSD, now you have 2 different PSDs of that same photo, one with the dark editing and one with the light editing, for example. And each one takes off in a different direction from Photoshop. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, since we were done about 6 minutes ago, if there's anything else you guys want to ask or tell me, but otherwise, if you need to leave, I know I keep you hanging. Other than that, it's next week is the last week. And yeah, thanks so much, Ryan, for sharing. I hope I'm going to go see what happened if I ruined forever my VDI, or if I can clear it up. I'm here for questions, but if you need to go, then I'll see you guys next week, or some of you guys on Friday for Illustrator. Oh, my dog thinks I'm saying goodbye to someone. Is actually I am saying goodbye to all of you guys.
Bye, Deanna. See you Friday.
Bye, Leland. Bye, everyone.
Feed the dog.
Yeah.
Bye. See you Friday.
Bye. Oh no, he wasn't breaking because I was saying bye. It's my son who's arriving from school. Oh, it's the one that we were just working on. Yep, that's Santi, come here. Stick your head in for the few who are left. So they can, there's not many left. We were just working on your photo. So here, stick your head in. Oh, they can't see you back there because I have the blur. So he's not that different. Here he goes. See, he's kind of shorn on the sides right now. Short. All right. Hi, sweetie. All right. All right, guys. See you next week then, Bob. Thanks for sharing your files with me. Yeah, I don't know if you want me to try to, oh, I can't hear you.
You can use those however you want to,
Okay.
like as a project or whatever.
I'll see if I can open it and if it's big enough to do something with it, that'll be fun.
Yeah, I think it was shot with a low quality camera.
Yeah, I'll see if it's a good, I like what you did with it. I like that you got so creative with it and it's so cool. And so it'd be good if we can find, it shocked me the moment I first saw it. And then I went, oh, okay. Actually though, what didn't shock me was your worked version. Cause I saw that one first. You first showed me the one that the first that popped up for me was the reaching out to the light. And I didn't think of anything of it. But then when I saw the real one, I went, oh, light bulb.
Yeah. Well, it got by the judges, you know.
Yeah. So funny.
That's all that
So funny.
counts.
Yeah, that's all that matters, right? What the judges say. It's like your life is guided by your judgments. Oh, the other day you said something that made me think. Actually, I can stop the recording. Bye everyone who's in the recording.